evening, everyone, or whatever time zone you're in. It is Friday, May 28th. I am your host, Sauron, the Dark Lord of Mordor. That is a fact. Don't look it up. And welcome to the BlackGate podcast, episode 2. Sauron versus Predator. Today with me, I have assembled a host. Well, no, I've assembled a crew of the galaxy's greatest hunters to help me take on the most dangerous game. So, instead of introducing them, I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with the lady in the deer costume.
I'm Soggy. I am a freelance adult artist. I was originally going to either do a look inspired by the Predator or Arnold, but I was just feeling way too tired, so I went as Prey today. So, but my mother said I'm the deer from what was it, Predator versus Hunter Requiem? You know, the one where they kill babies. So I'm the deer from the baby killing movie.
Okay. Next up, IronVerse. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, folks. I'm Cody, EIC IronVerse Comics, and I'm just happy to be here.
Next up, I'll have the lad known as Slim.
Well, I'm Chris Hansen from Dateline NBC. How would you have a seat right there?
Oh, good lord. I don't know why I didn't recognize the profile pic until you said Chris Hansen. I was like, Jesus Christ.
But no,
my God, Alien versus Predator.
I'm Slim, and I'm just an asshole with opinions, man. I'm just happy to be here.
All right, and next up we have the Lord Megatron.
Hello there, and this was something that needs to be discussed about. So much so, especially since it's owned by Disney.
Oh lord, the dark days have arrived. And last but not least, Jay.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jay Stepp. You might remember me from fun little tweets like the one that got 2,000 angry Shiva stands at me. But today, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about Alien versus Predator. And to put my background knowledge on that, besides, of course, being a professional animator, digital artist, I've also been checking out Predator since, of course, the movie, but also checking out the comics as well, ranging from one where he's fighting a Native American, he being the Predator, of course, to fighting the Russians, to fighting New Yorkers, to fighting even the Batman. Now, that was some fun times.
And don't forget, he also fought against a pirate.
Oh, we can't forget about that.
And Superman.
Pirate.
Now, that one I didn't. No, that one I forgot.
Pirate Story is amazing.
Oh yeah, we'll get into it. But just as a prefix, keep in mind that everything all these crazy things Jay said about the Predator fighting other things, those are all in the comics. In the movies, none of that happens. So it's like all the cool stuff, once again, are in the comics. But, so let's kind of start things off here.
Do they ever fight Red Sonja?
No, but the alien did fight Vampirella.
Oh man, that would be so cool. Oh, all right. Don't get me off track because we'll get into that.
Sorry.
But basically, so as to kind of straight it up, like, we're all fans of the Predator here. Me especially. I've seen all the movies, read all the comics, played most of the games because some of them are kind of hard to track down nowadays. But generally, we all love the Predator, the alien Predator, not the Chris Hansen Dateline Predator. But
I love that show.
Basically, we're here to discuss and ultimately get to the bottom line is why the hell is the Predator, the first film, such an amazing classic, and yet every sequel coming after it just doesn't seem to live up to it. They got good ideas here and there in between. There's a bunch of cool stuff in the lore and all the books, novels, things like that. But for some reason, not a single one of these extra sequels, prequels, or whatever ever seemed to truly live up to the original classic. Today, we're going to try to figure out why. All right, so Sorry, I'm pouring myself a little drink because I'm gonna need some whiskey for this one.
Drinking beer myself, man. No shame.
So just to kind of get a prefix on everything, on Twitter, I asked everyone, simple poll, which is the best Predator sequel? Technically, there are
Predator
5
2.
Predator sequels, but I can only put 4, so I had to combine AVP 1 and 2 into one category. But we had Predator 2, Predators, or technically Predator 3, The Predator, which is Predator 4, and then AVP 1 and 2. Predator 2 had 68 votes. Predators had 22 votes.
Good.
AVP 1 and 2 had 8% of the votes. And The Predator sitting at dead last with a fat 0%.
Good lord.
I mean, I would say I'm surprised, but I'm not.
No.
So, alright, so. Uh-oh, what's this? A second Soggy.
Oh, that's
has
just
joined
when
us.
we're ready. That's
Okay,
when we're
okay.
ready to actually start drawing some. When we're ready to start drawing some predators, you can click on that, and we'll start broadcasting that. When you're ready.
All right, so I'm gonna go in an order. I'm going in a reverse order this time, starting with Jay, ending with Soggy. Just kind of, I guess you could say, describe like what Predator movies have you seen, and aside from the first one, what would you say is your next favorite? Starting with Jay.
I definitely would have to say Predator 2, mostly because I believe during the time that came out, I was really into Lethal Weapon. So the fact that Glover was in that movie would definitely influence my decision on that. I did also watch Alien versus Predator, and I did think that was a interesting film. One thing that was neat was they did take some references off the comic, if I'm not mistaken. Specifically, the one who actually survived made an appearance in the comic itself. Now, I don't think that she actually goes into the other movies in the future, but it was still kind of neat. But nevertheless, if I was going to say which one would be my favorite, I definitely would have to say 2 on my end.
All right, it's a pretty solid answer. What about you, Megatron? What would you say is your favorite outside of the original?
As I put in the voting poll, I would put down Predators because I just like the idea of the main characters are not badass Marines or soldiers. They are criminals, scum being hunted down. It's just like, I just love seeing that the worst of mankind can offer gets to be hunted down for that perfect opportunity. Plus, it was also a film produced by Robert Rodriguez, so I really can't hate on that film.
It's hard to believe that Robert Rodriguez made Spy Kids and Predators. Like, let that sink in just for a brief second. And Machete. So,
Yeah.
There is some connection there.
Yeah, he was supposed to direct the Predator film, but he was too busy, so he was like, I'll produce it, at least.
Oh, what a world that could have been if he had directed it. All right, Chris Hansen, what are your thoughts on Predator?
Well, when I
Slam?
first got introduced to the Predator, he came in and immediately came off this debonair of. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, that was a Chris Hansen gang. Anyway, no promises.
Take a seat.
And I'm not high yet, by the way. Just putting that out. Anyway,
Oh god.
the thing I think I like Predator 2 more because Predator 2 did like introduce the like in the first film that made it really unique from other monster movies is that this was a creature that could think, that could trap, that could trick you into doing things, and that's kind of what made it unique. With Predator 2, they kind of added a bit more depth to that. Basically they were being hunted, but they still had a code of honor. They had their own religion, their own idea. Like there was a whole. They were basically an entire different society of creatures that had their own, like I said, codes and ideas. That added a layer of depth to the monsters, and very similar to when I want to say. I know this is weird because they're both like 80s movies, but in a very similar way to like Terminator. The first Terminator, it was pretty black and white. stop the evil robot from killing, John Connor's mom or whatever. Killing Sarah Connor before John Connor's born or whatever. But then like Terminator 2 introduced new ideas and made it more, I guess you could say, gray area. And added a lot of more depth to the whole, artificial intelligence argument. This did the same thing with the Predator idea. It wasn't just a random accident that this creature had the abilities and the ultimate hunter. This is a creature that knows how to hunt humans and knows how to hunt other animals and other creatures for that very reason, because he comes from a culture of hunting, and basically just added a lot more, in my opinion. Predators was fine, but I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Sorry. Predators was fine, but Predators was fine, and the Predator was dog shit. That's all I'm gonna say for right now.
Oh God!
Don't say what you really feel.
All right, Cody, what are your thoughts on the Predator or Predator? Oh God!
I got you. Well, I've seen Predator 2 quite a few times, about as many times as Predator. I've seen AVP quite a few times, just for the funds of the idea there. But I saw Predators maybe twice since it came out, and it's been a while, and I enjoyed that. I like the idea of the scum of humanity being hunted, but I also like that they'll transplant things to other places to hunt. That was kind of an interesting new angle. They really take that seriously. But Predator 2 definitely is my favorite out of the sequels. Taking it to a cityscape, I think, was genius. That these weren't special forces warrior soldiers right in the middle of nowhere, just them and their enemy. It was civilians. It was cops. It was this crazy, it had that vibe of, we don't really know what's going on. We think it's a crazy serial killer for a while. I think that was a great way to try and evolve the idea a bit, and I think it did pretty well. And I liked how it landed at the end, giving Glover a little bit a love. Given the ship design was awesome at the end. Given the little AVP teaser with the alien skull up there. I mean, they put a lot of little love into Predator 2. It's not as good as the original, but the love was still there. The sequels, it's a little different.
All right, and last but not least, Soggy, your thoughts on Predator?
Oh, well, this is going to be interesting. I actually grew up watching the second movie more often or not, but it was on TV, like as a Sunday movie all cut up. But then when I was older, I finally saw it on cable, and then I went to I looked at my mom, because I usually watch stuff with her. I'm like, this movie's still cut up. And Predator 2 also introduced me to how much I fucking hate the MPAA. Yeah, look into it. I think it was finally restored just a few years ago, that they finally restored the X-rated version. You should look into that. I love Danny Glover. I loved Gary Busey. Let's see. Then I saw the first movie, yet again cut up on TV, commercials and all. Love it. Masterclass of man in nature. Also, guys, you probably know this about how Jean-Claude Van Damme was a diva on the movie and walked. He was the Predator at one point.
Oh yeah, like before the film was even like
the crab monster
integrated. Yeah, like he was supposed to be the monster.
Yep.
It wasn't even the Predator at first. It was like a whole nother design, and he didn't want to do it because he could supposedly. This is a rumor that you couldn't see his face, and supposedly that was the reason why he didn't want to do it. I've heard things where it says like, no, he just didn't like the suit, things like that. So but still, it's still funny that
he also wanted more kickboxing.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
He thought there was going to be more.
More kung fu.
Please say it, Slim. I know what you're going to say. Please say
The
it.
Virgin, the Virgin Van Dam, who wants his face shown all the time, versus the Chad Ryan Reynolds, whose best role was mostly in a fucking mask.
Oh
Yep.
yeah. Oh man. As a side tangent, I think it says a lot because what was the guy's name? Peter Kevin Hall, I think is the guy who played the Predator. I think he was like
Amazing.
over
Man.
over 6 feet tall. He had a background in like dancing, and that was one of the reasons why they wanted him to be the Predator, was because they wanted him to be able to like be this big, tall, bulky creature, but still agile and kind of add to the alien quote unquote element to him, the otherworldly element. All right, so from what it sounds,
Where's
we all
that
in
Predator?
agreement.
Where they
I
dance
mean, they're
fight?
out there. They're out there.
Where's the dance fighting Predator?
What's that fighting style from Tekken? Koopa? I don't know, the one where they Capoeira, whatever you call it. Oh, I would love to see a
Capoeira.
Predator movie that have that fighting style.
It
Basically,
would look too weird for the
that's-
Predator to do that. Can you imagine
It's,
him acrobatic and shit?
Yeah, it's like Brazilian dance fighting, and if you guys have ever seen like Samurai Champloo, that's what they based Mugen's fighting style off of.
Oh, yeah,
Where he's basically like freestyle break dancing throughout most of the show. That's capoeira. He's just dance fighting.
God, now I want to see that, a Predator dance fighting to take on anybody. I don't care who his opponent is. I want to see that now.
I just think it's kind of funny because
Predator the musical.
Oh, good lord! Why, Saki? Why? I couldn't even sing.
I mean,
it's probably better than whatever Disney's coming up with.
I mean,
and that's how you get women to watch Predator. You make it a musical.
For anyone,
you dance fight the feelings out.
Yeah,
Oh, Slim's dying.
All the singing shit.
Mary Jane's choking him out.
Nah, Mary Jane is she's throat fucking me right now. Shit.
Hello.
But I was gonna say, like, given how awful the Predator was in 2018, I mean, is the musical really that far of a stretch? I mean, that movie was basically just a comedy.
Yeah.
Just a weird, dark
the
comedy.
one, right?
Huh?
Talking about the second one?
Weaponized autism.
No, I'm talking about the Predator. See, that's the other thing.
Oh,
The names.
okay.
Harvest.
Yeah, like here's
The names.
apparently one of the guys who, I think he was the comic relief of the first Predator movie, he actually wrote this Predator movie. That Predator movie.
Yeah, he wrote and
Shane
directed
Black.
this one.
He also wrote Lethal Weapon.
Like,
Holy
Shane Black,
shit.
he's done great movies. He's done fantastic movies. Some of his movies I absolutely love. But my God,
The whole
like,
How could someone who wrote Lethal Weapon write that?
I mean,
there
we
was
have,
two writers for it, and I think it was just like a war with the studio the entire time. And then by the end of it, they had to redo the mess a little bit, and then we got their, I don't know, put in a box mess where there's like 15 to 20 plot holes throughout the whole thing that are just glaring. A lot of things that aren't explained, and that's without the bad plot.
Not to mention,
but there's also another
And the
thing.
missing scenes.
Also, didn't they say like in the movie like all the previous Predator films are canon?
Yeah, and then they go
Yeah.
out against
Yes.
that. It's,
yeah. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
there's-
so,
I don't. Wait, can I ask a question? Does that mean that Alien versus Predator, like both Alien versus Predator movies, are canon?
no.
Yes.
So, well,
Yes.
sort of. So that we'll get into that because we're gonna go in order based on the movies and their release date. So we're gonna start with the Predator. Well, God, I keep saying,
Just say Predator 2018.
yeah, I'm gonna just say Predator 2018 or Predator was 87.
Or
So,
Shane Black
I'll just-
Predator.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying though, but I'll try my best to maintain which one I'm talking about. So we're gonna start with the original Predator film. We're gonna start by what we loved with it, and we'll try our best to say stuff that we actually think is negative, because I don't want it to be, because I mean it's so easy to just say, oh, it's a classic, done deal. Like, if you got gripes about that first film, just say it. But basically, this first film is pretty much where the concept came from. There was no I don't think there was any novels. There was no like books it was based on. It was just a movie. I can't think of the director's names. What's that?
I'll wait till my turn. Don't worry.
Okay. But I think it was John McTernan. I think it was like I can't remember who exactly was like the main person behind the idea, but basically, you know, this original idea where you star in all these big time action heroes, Arnold Schwarzenegger being, you know, the main man. You had Carl Weathers. You had God, who else? Jesse Ventura, of all fucking people, and basically like
There it is.
There's the original design for the Predator, the original Jean-Claude Van Damme Predator. But basically, like, you had this movie, which in its opening, it starts off as a pretty generic 80s action movie. It even has like the generic action scene of them fighting up against like the Russians or guerrillas in the jungle. There's explosions. There's a bunch of chaos. They're spitting one-liners to their enemies and stuff like that.
America, fuck yeah!
Exactly. Even though their leader's a freaking Dutch man with a thick accent. But basically, this movie
America's
was
diverse.
Diversity
wasn't it?
I mean, it is pretty accurate. Like, it's the most diverse. Oh, that's another thing. Like, that movie is super diverse. Like, you don't even think about it, but like, you got characters from all walks of life working together. But basically, movie starts off generic action film, generic action, one-liners being thrown around, and then right before the halfway mark, it just takes a complete tonal shift into just basically sci-fi action horror, where now this team of ultimate badasses are just getting picked off one by one by something that you don't even get to see until like definitely about towards like the final, right towards the end of the movie is when you finally get to see it. And it did what I know we like to like talk shit about the idea now, but it subverted everyone's expectations with that. Like, go back. I would love to see someone go back and rewatch The Predator, having never heard of it, and just getting.
Sorry.
Slim's
You
dying.
okay, man?
Yeah, I'm about to say Slim's dying now.
Yeah,
I'm not.
He needs more sauce.
I'm not dying. I was just saying. Can we stop saying subverting expectations? It's a plot twist. That's what it is. It's a plot twist. Just call it what the fuck it is. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm tired of it feels pretentious to me to get it's subverted my expectations. It was a plot twist. It was a twist you didn't see coming. I don't mean you, Sauron. I'm sorry. I couldn't.
No, I get what you're saying, because when you kind of think about it, it is a plot twist. Because at first, when they because it's kind of like when Cody was saying, where like they have like the investigation into the Predator, because like they find the dead bodies strung up, all skinned alive, and there's like this kind of like a debate amongst them, like who could have done this? Like, this seems inhumane, even for like a bunch of crazed killers. And then as the movie progresses, you slowly reveal that it's literally a motherfucking alien. And a bit of personal experiences. When I was a kid, I didn't watch this movie when it came out. I'm not that old. But when I watched this movie as a kid, I used to think Arnold Schwarzenegger was the strongest man on the planet. I saw him in Terminator, T2. I saw him in all sorts of different action films. Then I saw The Predator. And watching that man get his ass handed to him in that final fight between him and that 7-foot-tall reptile beast thing, oh my god, that terrified me as a kid.
All the more reason why.
So you saw your dad get beat up on screen. You just saw Daddy Arnold get beat up.
I wish that was my dad.
I think Arnold was kind of our symbolic dad. Us kids of the 80s and 90s, I think he was our symbolic father. I'm not joking. Like, this is not a joke. He is that ingrained in our childhoods.
I definitely have to agree.
Mine was Uncle Phil. For friends.
I'm about to say, like,
nice.
when you really think about it, I had a lot of like TV movie screen dads, so to make up for my lack of a real father.
Ooh, sorry, man.
That's all good. I'm well over it.
Fair enough.
I'm just lighten the mood.
Do we all have
But-
daddy issues? I swear we're the daddy issue podcast crew.
Sorry, I'm like Nathan Explosion from what do you call it? Metalocalypse. Like,
Oh no!
It's the exact same freaking thing.
He's like, yeah, dude.
love my dad.
He's like, I hate my dad. Yeah, I hate my dad too. I hate my dad. He's like, oh, don't get talking about my dad's fault.
Hell, I'm gonna be
My
looking
dad's
at
great. I love my
houses
dad.
tomorrow, and I'm calling them up.
Oh, Jesus Christ! All
Sorry,
right,
John.
so
Date.
What?
I'm about to say, Dayton. I already know your situation. You don't have to say anything.
All right.
Yeah.
all right. So basically, Predator starts off this amazing concept. It's an amazing monster,
Guys.
partly created by Stan Winston, partly created by oh my god, I can't. So many great minds behind that. But basically, I kind of want to do like we did before, just kind of go around and just say things you liked about the Predator, the original film. And, if you got something you didn't like about it, feel free to say. Because, like all movies, nothing's perfect. Predator's close to being perfect, but it's not perfectly perfect. So I'm going to start with...
Prince of Egypt is perfect. I don't care what the fuck you say.
All right, that's a whole nother leak, though. All right, we'll talk about that some other day.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
That's
We'll say that for another stream.
movie.
Let my people go.
Next Easter. No, wait, what's the next religious holiday?
Christmas?
Actual
No, Ramadan.
Okay, let's just talk about Predator again.
Yeah, let's stick to Predator before we go completely off tangent here.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. So who? Because I don't know. I'm assuming everyone here has seen at least the original Predator, right? I don't want to assume nothing.
Of course.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's just been a long time, but yes.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, I can't expect everyone to be like me and watch it like annually.
I've seen
Rewatching it, I'll say this. It's another one of those pieces of media where, like, on a recent viewing, I realized, wow, there are yes, there's one, but wow, there are really no women in this movie. Like, there's a woman, but let's be honest, she's kind of not really there. Like, I don't really think she even has any lines. They correct that in the second movie. They correct that in the second movie, though, and I love that chick.
What's her name? Anna, I think her character name is.
From the first
Anna.
or second movie?
From the first film. Anna. And yeah, that is one thing that kind of always stood out to me. Is like, what is she doing here? I get she's with the gorillas, but what role does she serve? Plot-wise, she's there to basically tell them the legend of the Predator.
How are you gonna expect? You can't expect someone in the greatest virtual band group of all time to really stand out. I mean, got 2D on vocals, you got Murdoch on the fucking bass, you got Russell just rocking the hip hop and the drums, and Noodles killing the guitar. You're not gonna stand out in the gorillas. I'm sorry, it's just the make for it too good.
Oh Lord. All right. So.
Oh, dude.
Wow.
Noodle is voiced by one of the sisters from Chibi Moto, and people always criticize that band as being the song that they hate the most from Jet Set Radio. So,
Good Lord.
Noodle voices a song people hate.
All right, sit down, dog. All right, so we got Soggy's thoughts. I'm gonna go to Cody next.
Well, I mean, Predator it's a classic blockbuster. You're not going to get anything but if you're looking for action and gore out of it, which it didn't need to be anything more than that. But I mean, there's a lot of cool little bits. Again, we were talking about what the Predator is as a hunter, right? And so you got a lot of those nifty little bits. The mimicry was great. You get a lot of good character moments for the team, right? They each get something. But but yeah, it was just a bunch of hypermasculinity shoved in and then let loose for a while and then hunted. And that was a good concept, but it's not deep. There's not, you know, it's not going to be much more than a bubble. But and for the lady, I think she was mainly there just so Arnold could, you know, get to the chopper to somebody.
Can you imagine them going over this and like, okay, this is fantastic, but there's one problem. Everything's perfect with one problem. I want a line where Arnold says, "Get to the chopper," but he needs somebody there to say it. But everybody's dead at this point, so we need somebody there to say it. It's just, and he's just like,
dude,
I don't think
Arnold,
he's not gonna care that
Arnold
much.
was like,
and then James Cameron.
Arnold was like, "Get a woman. I need some titties to look at." He's like, "Get a woman for the line. I need some titties to look at. I'm sick of looking at man titties." Oh, dude, he really talks about titties all the time. Arnold talks about tits so much.
How many takes do you think it took for them to get to the chopper line?
So it was clear. Quite a few.
To me, let's be real here.
He was probably
Arnold
passing
is
out.
based. Arnold is based. He's a titty man, and he's based, and I respect him for that.
Oh, what's that like? Clip of him smoking a cigar. He's like, "I smoke a cigar in my house, and why? Because I ain't a little bitch."
Yep. Oh yeah.
Oh man,
I low-key have a crush on 80s Arnold. I know he's a grabber, but I low-key have a crush on him.
All right, I don't know if Cody, you got to finish. If you want anything else, you can add.
Not too much. Again, it's a very A to B with the twist with subverting expectations by, you know, showing how badass these guys are, but then there's something worse that's just destroying them. Like Arnold used his brains instead of just his brawn to beat him by the end, which was kind of neat for an Arnold film at that time.
Damn.
Awesome, you know.
Oh God, Slim's dying.
He's not
I'm
dying.
not dying.
He's not dying.
He's communicating with his ancestors. He's a ninja like me. We're communicating with our ancestors, Slim.
I thought he was trying to communicate with the Predator using like some kind of weird smoke signal shit.
Predator weed? Predator weed. Oh, that'd be amazing.
That'd be. Can you imagine how fucking great that would be?
Well, I mean, in the lore, in the comics, they do have Predator whiskey. In the lore, there is Predator whiskey. But I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be straight up just lethal for a human. It's like Mass Effect with the Krogan liquor, where it's just like, no, you don't understand. This will literally kill you. This isn't like a dare. This isn't a bet. I'm not saying you're weak. I'm saying this literally will kill you because it's not made for something of your biology. And I think that's how they explain it in like the Predator canon. It's just like, no, this isn't a test of strength. You're gonna die. It's not meant for human consumption.
Man, I paid $3 for this fucking lighter. Better not be fucking broken.
All right, Jay, what are your thoughts and opinions on the original Predator?
Okay, before I say my thing, I just want to say this first, because what I'm about to say after this might seem sacrilege. I loved the Predator movie. I loved the fact that it pretty much was a male power fantasy at the very beginning. They got the biggest, burliest guys that they could. They got the biggest weapons. They did ridiculous shit. And all the stuff at the beginning, I just loved it because it really set up everything for how powerless they were when the Predator came in. And that was just so freaking awesome. I loved it. There is one thing. Don't get me wrong, still love the movie. I'm going to be honest, it's still one of the 9, possibly 10 out of 10s. But there's one thing that was always weird. That 1 centimeter of mud basically made Arnold Schwarzenegger blind to the Predator. Like it wasn't even a centimeter, it was like half a centimeter, but he was covered in mud, and apparently it dropped his body temperature just enough that the Predator completely missed him. And that was just weird. So.
Yeah, that is like, when you think about that, it's like you have the super advanced alien, you have the super advanced alien hunter who's very clearly not from Earth. He's got high-tech gadgets, got active camo, all this stuff, but an inch of mud is enough to hide you from him. Like, that does seem kind of like a bit of a foresight, or one of those where it's like, they kind of had to give him a weakness kind of thing. I know they
guys,
on it later.
That's why the Predator can't fight women. If he fights a woman who cakes her face in really heavy makeup, he can't see her. Ideas for women versus predators.
I think
someone's already taken her trophy.
Wow.
I think advanced technology doesn't mean practical technology.
Okay,
that
is
true too. That is true too. And we'll get into that when we go to like the comic side of things, because but like let me finish going through everybody first.
Okay. Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's funny because I don't know why it was in my grandpa's house, but he had a Mad magazine, and it actually made fun of that little fact. It's like, okay, Mad magazine is just calling you out on your shit. You may have fucked up. It was funny too, because Mad magazine was just going over all the stuff that was a problem with it. It's just like one person was taking a big what do you call it, a tally of what happens. Like, oh, we killed all their forces, destroyed all their weapons, and all we got was a scraped knee. Anyway, sorry, I just found, but it was just funny that when Mad magazine pointed out that
I got fucking ripped off.
I'm done. Sorry, thank you.
Oh, I'm
you're
sorry.
Good. You're good. All right, and then finally, what do you guys say?
Nothing. I didn't give my opinion on it yet. I just said random shit throughout.
All right. So last we got Megatron.
I just considered the Predator films, at least the first one, second, and Predators, just mindless popcorn film just to watch and enjoy. Nothing big, but you get some good entertainment out of it. Plain and simple.
Fair enough.
I think that's the best way to kind of describe that original film. Like, it's not really like, it's not some high art film. It's a very classic 80s. Oh, sorry, dog. It's a very classic 80s action movie with extra.
I need to load my stepdad into the car right now, and they need help with that because he's disabled. I need to go. You can turn down. You can take down the art stream. I was trying to draw Arnold covered in a pound of makeup.
All right.
Oh, you.
All right. So, that kind of threw me off. But yeah, basically, I think that first movie can be very much satiated as a good action flick, good popcorn flick. I wouldn't necessarily call it the deepest movie, but I wouldn't say it's without any kind of substance. There's plenty of stuff to enjoy. And I think overall, anyone, if you've never seen a Predator movie, that is definitely the movie to watch of all of them, in terms of like appealing to just about anyone, in terms of just general appeal. I don't think there's like much extra stuff you kind of have to prepare yourself for if you're not into those kind of movies. So, excuse me. So, following the Predator, you think we would go into Predator 2, but nay. But back in those sorry, that was a horrible segue. But basically, back in those days, when a lot of movies came out, they would get sequels, but not necessarily in a direct film sequel. A lot of times, a lot of movies got sequels in the forms of comic books, novels, stuff like that. And the Predator was no exception. I know Alien got that treatment, Terminator got that treatment, Predator is no exception. And I believe it was early 90s, I can't remember exactly when, or late 80s, early 90s. Dark Horse Comics came out with a 4-issue series simply called Predator. And basically it picks up, sort of picks up right where the first movie left off. But instead of following Dutch, Arnold's character in the film, it follows his brother, who is a cop in New York. Why a Dutch man is an officer in New York, I mean, you know, it's 80s, 90s. Who gives a damn? But basically,
I
like,
mean, America's diverse. Diversity is our strength. Can you hear
it
that,
sure
Susan
is.
Susan Wojcicki? I just said a good thing. I said good thing on podcast. Podcast gets more views.
But basically, the story follows his brother, who is a cop in New York, and in the middle of a heat wave, suddenly a bunch of murders start happening throughout the city. And of course, he's trying to, you know, being the macho badass, because he's basically Dutch. He's basically Arnold's character, but different. Just I think he's got blonde hair instead. Basically the same character, and he's just like, all right, we gotta figure out what's going on. Dives in deeper. Turns out there's a whole predator invasion happening in New York. Like, it's full scale, like, war. And I mean, it's not that deep. It's only 4 issues. But at the same time, it is still a fun read. Like, at least I would say it's a fun read. It's very much like the film in the sense that it's very kind of pretty basic. It's got some kind of weird elements in the sense of the government trying to hunt down the predators, how they know about the predators, kind of like it's explained, but it's explained in a very weird way. Why the predators are attacking, because like they're not just hunting people. It's straight up like full scale, like almost like a full scale war where you got like not hundreds, you got like several predators just going throughout New York City, just taking out criminals, cops, anyone's got a weapon on them. And unfortunately, especially now since Disney bought the freaking property, you'll be hard pressed to find those comics, especially obviously not the issues, but they had like omnibuses, volume collections. You can sometimes find those, but I know I recently looked this up with a friend of mine, and some of those comics go for like $60. But I don't know if anyone here has seen or read those comics. I know Jay has, so I'll start with him. So what are your thoughts on that original Predator comic run?
Oh, it was pretty interesting. I mean, the art was pretty cool. The story was very interesting as well. I thought that Dutch, well, Dutch the brother, or Dutch's brother, he was a pretty interesting guy. And of course, it all seemed like a. Did the Predator because I got to be honest, I saw Predator 2 before I read the comics. Do you think that the comic came out before Predator 2, or what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. That was the thing I was going to get into. I was going to let everyone get their thoughts on, but I don't know if anyone else got anything else to add to the Predator comic book.
Well, just the thing that I thought was even more interesting is the fact that not only was the story really interesting, but they also have an epilogue that happens where. Are we talking about all the comics or just that one?
We could talk about all that first, because I know what you're talking about. It's that first 3 arcs of the comic. So, like, they're all connected because they all follow the same kind of storyline. But there's no point in breaking those up because we'll be here all day.
Oh yeah. Well, all right. Then I'll wrap it up with the second arc. It's interesting that they ended up being so I'd say relatively popular that they ended up continuing the story. With the story where the Predators go to Russia. And the reason why they go to Russia is apparently there was some problem with their ship. And I guess it was easier to get into Russian nuclear facilities than it was to get into US one. So they decided to raid this one Russian nuclear facility to basically steal their power and also kind of steal their heat. Because, not sure if you know this, Predators don't like cold. So apparently they spent a good chunk of their time in these nuclear areas to kind of warm up and stuff like that. But anyways, it was just neat to see the story continue. A little epilogue. You saw like Dutch still in the city trying to fight crime. His buddy, his best friend, I should say, he actually moved to an old town to be a sheriff there. And and one thing I did like about that too was it showed that despite the fact that they ended up being separated, when the time came, they still were able to connect and kick ass together too. So that's my thoughts. I love the comics.
Oh yeah.
So probably could jump in with that.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else. I'll go more into it, but I don't want to cut off anyone else who's might have read the comics, especially specifically those first 3 arcs of Dutch's brother.
One other thing I almost forgot to mention. Dutch's brother is way better at fighting predators one-on-one than Dutch ever was. Because in the one where he's in Russia, he actually takes on a predator with just a really hard helmet, and he almost wins, except that one thing. What do you call it? Shoulder lasers.
Yeah, because at that point he's fought in like what 3-4 predators at that point. Killed a couple of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, at that point, like it was like. I know a lot of people like give credit to Dutch, like Arnold Dutch in the movies. That's like the coolest human character in the series. But like when it comes to the comics, his brother, like he's probably got more kills under his belt from predators than anything else, any other human at least. I don't know if anyone else, because I saw Cody shaking his head, so I'm just gonna assume you're not too familiar with that first comic art.
No, not with any of the comics. Well, okay, Batman versus Predator I've read, but that's it.
Oh, another good one.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. We'll get to that one a little bit, but Slim, Megatron.
Like I said, I'm only familiar with the one for where there was the Predator and the Pirate one teaming up, and then that would lead up to the Flintlock trade in the Predator 2 film. That was about my only exposure reading Predator comics.
Okay, I know exactly which one you're talking about. It's one of my favorite Predator comics. Slim?
I told you before, I'm not really big on the comics, sorry. I'm mostly in the mainstream films.
That's all good, man. I kind of figured this part was going to be a bit more focused. But basically, because I know Jay was kind of getting into it, is that basically, like, before Predator 2 came out, the original sequel to Predator Classic was the comic book. And if you were to read the comic and then watch Predator 2, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Because basically, when Predator 2 was being made, they pretty much adapted that first 4-issue miniseries into the film. Obviously, there's a lot of changes. One being, like, the city is L.A., not New York. Second, obviously, Danny Glover's character, what's his name? Hannigan. He's not Dutch's brother. That'd be pretty cool. It wouldn't make a lick of sense, but that would be pretty cool. But yeah, for the most part, basically, like the meat of the story is adapted to the film in the sense that it's been several years after the original movie. The Predator has now come to a city in the middle of a heat wave where there's a bunch of crime and stuff happening all over the city, and he's basically taking the opportunity to hunt. They kind of drop a lot of the other elements in the sense of where the Predators are kind of displayed in all-out war with the humans. It never leads to the whole Predators in Russia kind of thing. And what's the other thing? But basically, like, it's not a perfect one-to-one adaptation because there are a lot of differences. And one thing I will say is that a lot of the stuff that, like, the lore would later adapt to the Predators mythos in future books, future films, future whatever, mostly came from Predator 2's version of the story rather than the comic book. Because, like I said, in the comic book, basically the story is like the Predators have been coming here for many years. Dutch is like the first human. Arnold Dutch is like the first human to defeat one of them in like decades. It doesn't go into how long specifically, but it's been a long time. So now all of the Predators are basically, all right, humans are our target now. Now we got to come down and get our great fights with these humans, and that's basically what leads to the full-scale war. However, in Predator 2, obviously, it's a lot more toned down. It's essentially one Predator. You don't really, aside from him just being there to hunt, there's no, like, greater motive for him being there. He's just, I'm here to hunt, I'm here to tear up, and I'm hunting this one super cop. But a lot of the later lore, like the Predators' age, them having a clan, the stricter sense of honor among them, all of that, and even the very concept of, it's debatable whether Alien vs. Predator was born from Predator 2 or not, but basically a lot of that came from Predator 2. And
I think they confirmed that the xenomorph thing was initially just a was initially just an Easter egg, like a little inside joke, but people took it seriously apparently.
Yeah, and then like Fox realized, hey, we own these properties, might as well. But before we jump into that bit, though, I mean, that's kind of the segue into Predator 2 right there, where you had this original comic come out, you had 3 main arcs that kind of go through, but that first arc, which a lot of people kind of call now Predator Concrete Jungle, that's like the unofficial subtitle to it, is basically the inspiration that led to Predator 2. And now we arrive to Predator 2, everyone's favorite Predator sequel. Good God, man.
Who the hell is killing Slim?
The Predator,
Oh my
man.
God.
You caught him.
Mary Jane.
Oh, God, the Predators are getting their revenge.
You heard you've been talking shit
Why are they
about
going?
it.
Well,
Why are they going after me?
it's either Mary Jane or Smoke.
They're going after you
It's
'cause you
either
told them
Mary
to take
Jane
a
or
peek.
Smoke.
He's gone out.
Smoke heard you talking shit about the new Mortal Kombat movie.
No. He's the Predators are sick and tired of Chris Hansen capturing their brothers.
See right here.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Can you imagine one of those guys going in, sitting down, and says, "Why were you here today?" And he's like, "I was hunting the most dangerous game." You're going to jail for a long time.
I would love to see someone like walk in on one of those, and they're in like I don't know how the context would ever get to that point, but they're wearing like a Predator cosplay, and it's like, well, this is kind of poetic.
That's part of the. I get really turned on when I'm dressed like the Predator.
I have a very specific fetish. Very specific.
I mean, like, there was this one guy on the Catch Predator who was actually a big fan of the show. Like that actually happened. That actually happened. He was like, he went in and he said, "Hey, I got he went in and said, "Hey, Megatron says bye. He has to go. See you. See you, Dave."
Oh no! Good night. Good night, Megatron.
He basically said, I watch your show. I watch your show all the time. He had a lisp and everything, and he said,
"Oh no!"
And he said, "Oh, I watch your show all the time. I heard you on NPR." Again, these episodes came out in like 2005, by the way, so of course it's gonna be from NPR if anything. And he said, "Oh, you like me on the radio?" Yeah. And he's like, "I knew when I walked in. I knew when I walked in, and I was offered brownies that something was up." And he's like, "I've seen this before." And then you know what Chris Hansen says? He says, I don't think we've ever had brownies as one of the things." You just gotta see it. It's so funny. And then he says, then he asks for a fist bump as he leaves. He pulled EDP move. I think it's like I guess it's a thing that all Predators do. Just as soon as they get caught, like fist bump, just get a fist bump. Maybe makes what they did look less. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for going on that tangent.
All right, so side tangent aside. No, you're all good, man. This ain't a formal discussion. I'm drinking whiskey for Christ's sake. But God damn it, back to the original point. Predator 2. I know we all kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, in the sense that there's a lot of when it comes to Predator movies, it's everyone's second favorite. But God, move dog. Sorry, I got my little pooch here. She thinks she owns the bed. So, yeah. All right. So Predator 2.
Well, the cat's taking over my tablet.
I'll start with Cody here because I don't know, you just look cool.
I'll take
it. Basically, man, Predator 2. It's your overall positives, negatives, things you love about it.
It didn't really feel like it had a really defined goal besides its ideas, right? Like the plot moves along and it does okay, but it's less focused in forward movement than Predator was, Predator 87. But visually, I think I like the contrast again that now we're in a city, right? I like that a lot. But visually, it's a little it's a little less impressive, a little less engaging maybe than the Jungle was. But overall, the idea I think was more engaging. Glover does his job good for what it was. Again, hot off the heels of Lethal Weapon, so that helps a lot. It helped me a lot too. The gore was on point again. The spooks, I think it was a little bit scarier than the original film. Yeah, I do enjoy it. It's been a little bit since I've seen it. But I like, again, a lot of the visual elements were well chosen, and I can always appreciate that a lot, especially since, again, the story wasn't this big deal. So you got to play with the tools you got, and they did that well, I think.
I see Predator 2. I see Predator 2 a lot like how people see. I don't know why I keep making reference to other 80s movies in this thing, but it's kind of like Alien and Aliens, because like an Alien, it was more of a horror. With Aliens, it's more action oriented, and I kind of felt the same way with Predator. I mean Predator 2, because like once you think about it, like I get what you're coming from, Cody. Like, well, he's in a city and he's not just taking out a couple of, even though like it was impressive, like he could take out a couple of trained military men by himself, but those are only like 6 of them, and it was in a controlled environment and stuff like that. But this one, it's kind of like, oh shit, he could like straight up kill a bunch of people. But I think like when I say this is more action oriented, because I did focus less on, he's picking off these people one by one, like in Alien, where in Predator, like in Predators 2, it's more like he's trying to challenge this really good cop to a battle and like calling him out and stuff like that, which feels more like I don't want to say, again, another 80s movie, fucking Rocky, Rocky movies where he's just goading him into fighting him. I know, just 80s movies off the tongue.
I mean, 80s movies is basically a subgenre in and of itself when you really think about it.
Yeah, there were so many original ideas that came from that era. But I like and like you said, like it was kind of like, and again, another 80s movie, and somebody keep a counter of this, much like Jaws. They didn't really show what the alien looked like until like near the end. It was still impressive, but you kind of got that mystique and all that. Now we know what the alien is, what he looks like, and all that stuff. So we're seeing more of him, and that makes him come off as, less scary. And again, it's like it's going for more the action angle. So I'm not saying it's bad.
He's
I'm just saying like that's
in
what
this
it felt.
one.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that's something. Yeah, that's something that's something I noticed when I was rewatching it, is that, especially when watching them in order, is that as the movies kind of go on, there's a bit more characterization to each Predator that shows up in each film. Like, even the ones that get absolutely terrible, each Predator has its own, like, little quirks and, like, I don't want to say mannerisms, but, like, practice, how they hunt, things they do. And I know I've seen a lot of people kind of say, like, the City Hunter is like, which is, that's the code name for the Predator and Predator 2, City Hunter, is that he's a bit more of like a, what was it? It's like, he's a bit more of the asshole kind of Predator, because some of the things he does in that film, it's like, I'm not saying he broke his rules of honor, but he sure as shit was not playing fair. Like that whole subway scene, it's like, come on, man.
Oh, yeah.
You know damn well not everyone on here is a capable fighter. You just saw a bunch of people pull out guns, and you're like, all right, it's time to kill.
I mean, like one of the things I liked about Predator 2 is that, again, the Predator, I think it's because of the new setting, he has more to interact with, and I like the scene where it showed, like, for instance, he won't hurt any kids. Like I remember a kid pointed a toy gun at him and he didn't hurt him at all, and he let go of one. And I think he let go of that one girl because he found out.
Wow, that's commentary.
He didn't like.
That's some strong commentary going on.
Coming from Chris Hansen of all people.
Yeah, he.
Well,
and he let it.
Think about this. It's set in the future, in LA, and think about LA cops. In the real 1996.
Let me tell you something right now. If you're trying to say something about kids with guns, let me tell you right now, California, that was a problem in California for a while. But
yeah, no, that's what I mean. Cops were shooting kids with toy guns.
Oh Lord!
Like
well,
Isn't that why they banned the Megatron from getting into a gun toy?
Yeah,
yes,
there's like a whole,
it was
there's a whole
LJN.
thing about that.
LJN did this. Yeah, they had these super realistic guns, and they even had a license with the A-Team too.
Yeah, like
so you could have an A-Team machine gun as a kid in the 80s.
Yeah, like that's why they have these things like little orange tips, extremely bright neon orange tips to show, hey, this isn't a real. But anyway, talking about the Predator, Predator 2, I do like
guys.
I do like.
Saw Papa Cap and somebody's
This is a toy.
Oh wow!
This is a toy from Mattel, and it's metal. This is from the 60s. This is how realistic toy guns used to look. Oh, and it has like little rubber bullets, and I can open it.
Soggy, please don't hurt yourself again.
Like.
Please,
hey, I threw myself in the chair. I didn't hurt myself with a toy gun. Yeah, this says Mattel on it.
Seeing you waving a revolver, pointing in the wrong direction. I mean, we've already got the whole Predator chat going. That alone. We got Predator chat going. We got Chris Hansen on screen. We're already skirting the Twitter guide, the YouTube guidelines as it is. So,
well, yeah, especially what me and Slim have been doing. Especially since what me and Slim have been doing off camera.
Oh my.
That sounded so wrong.
Despite everything we've said here
That's
today,
not what it meant.
to remind you, this is a Christian stream. I will hold you accountable.
Oh,
there's a dark lord of Mordor.
The Dark Lord's a Christian? Mordor's a Christian.
I mean, anyhow, all right. Anyhow, before we get completely off track here, so yeah, Predator 2 introduces essentially a lot of what would become kind of standard canon for what the series would kind of move on with. And when we're rewatching the film, I was kind of surprised about how much stuff that like I kind of assumed in Predator 1 that I realized wasn't really there until I watched Predator 2. Like even his whole code of honor thing, you know, in the first film, it's really just no sport. It's not really a code of honor. It's just like, fun. But then in the second one, it introduces the whole code of honor. And one thing, because this is probably the best time to segue in this. I know we talked about it earlier when it comes to the Predator comic books, but I know Megatron and I can't remember who else it was off the top of my head. We were referencing a particular Predator comic in which the Predator goes up against some pirates. And
hey, Sauron.
Yo.
Sorry, I gotta go. I got something I need to do.
Oh, all right, man, you're good.
Okay. Good to see you, Slim.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see you guys later.
See you, Slim.
All right, later. All right, so what was I say? Oh yeah, so I know we talked about it earlier. There was a Predator comic book in which it ties into the Predator 2 film, in which there's a Predator going up against a bunch of pirates. I was looking this up because I can make sure I got the name correct. But the title is Predator 1718, I believe, is the one. And basically it's a short story about essentially a Predator who was hunting a pirate captain who right before he started hunting him, his crew led a mutiny against him. And so basically he's hunting the pirate captain. He's watching the captain kill like all these pirates hunting him down. He finally corners the captain. And as the two are having this pretty badass sword fight, the rest of the pirate crew catches up to them. And so for a brief moment, the Predator and the pirate captain set aside their beef and just say, all right, we'll deal with this trash first, and then we'll go back to our fight. And it's like a couple of pages, but it's still pretty fucking sweet. Where it's just a pirate captain and a predator fighting a bunch of pirates with swords. It's probably the most 80s action, 80s 90s action you can probably see in a comic book, and it's awesome. I don't care what anybody says. It's probably one of the coolest Predator stories outside of the films. I won't go into the spoilers of it because, honestly, like, in complete honesty, if you haven't read this comic, I suggest you read it. Predator 1718. And it's a short story. It's probably like a couple, like maybe 10, 15 pages at the most. It's not that long. But I would suggest giving it a read. If you've never read a Predator comic book, at least give that one a pick up. You can probably find it on certain sites.
Yeah, that's where I just found it. That's all only place too. Legit, that's doesn't look like it's going to be all too possible. But I did find it. It is out there. You're
not gonna. It's like with the ombuses. You're not going to find it by itself. And if you do find it, that's like a collector's thing, in my opinion. Because I don't even think it was its own issue. I think it was like in a Dark Horse like magazine. I don't even think it was in like its own separate comic until for like a while. But basically, it ties directly into Predator 2. It's not like some huge plot point of Predator 2 in which like you don't read the comic, you're going to miss out. But it is a pretty cool thing to check out. And then following like Predator 2 back to the comics is that basically for the longest time there was no other Predator material in films. There simply just was not. Everything that came out was novels, comics, and there was the Predator Concrete Jungle video game and the AVP arcade.
Oh, video games.
Yeah, video games. But basically, like, that was it. And that was around the time where Dark Horse / Fox kind of went hard into the very concept of Alien versus Predator. In case anyone doesn't know, Alien stems from the film Alien by Ridley Scott. And from what I was able to find out, basically the entire concept was simply kind of born from the brief little cameo Easter egg in Predator 2 where they have the Xenomorph skull on the wall, and basically a bunch of people at Fox saying, well, what if we put these two franchises together? And that's essentially where it came from. I know they did an initial story called Alien vs. Predator. I think it was either Alien vs. Predator, I had the name. I can't seem to find it. But basically, it's just called Alien vs. Predator.
From what I heard, Sigourney Weaver at one point held out on a contract and was like, do not make Alien versus Predator. I will do the third fucking Alien movie if you do not do Alien versus Predator. So, supposedly at one point, Sigourney Weaver was a roadblock.
Well, yeah, because that's a whole... Okay, that's a whole can of worms right there. But basically, at first they had a simple... Okay,
Alien
I found it. So basically, they had Alien vs. Predator. That was just the title. And it was a very... Honestly, it was a lot deeper of a story than you might think, where it goes into, like, much deeper history with the Predators mostly. They kind of leave the aliens a bit more ambiguous, but basically, the premise is that the Predators have a ritual where every so many years they set up these hunts on different worlds where they send down a bunch of like young adult-ish predators, and they have to prove themselves by hunting xenomorphs, which they consider to be the ultimate hunt in the entire universe, pretty much. And basically, the story is that the predators come to this planet. This planet, it takes place in the far future, like Alien kind of time period, like way in the future, space travel and stuff. And there's humans on the planet, and they're essentially caught in the middle between the aliens and the predators in this all-out hunt/war. Humans are trying to survive. They kind of complicate things. And so what's actually interesting to this story is that as the story progresses, you get a lot more characterization for the predators. One predator in particular, which I think his nickname is Broken Tusk. And essentially, when the predators find out that the humans are on the planet, after they serve their purpose of breeding the aliens, they start eliminating the humans. Broken Tusk kind of takes issue with this in the sense that like they're not really what we're here to hunt. they're not really like targets, but they're just kind of slaughtering them. And essentially, he kind of like, I guess you could say, defects from his clan and starts helping the humans in a little bit, at least in the sense of trying to survive the aliens. And that is essentially where the entire concept comes from, is from that first, I think, 4 or 5 comic series. But basically, that's where the entire concept comes from. And the original AVP film is loosely based on that.
Yep.
And it's probably the deepest dive into the Predator lore that you ever get outside, even the main comic series, which are like, they basically just kind of have the Predator as an antagonist against some other characters. Alien vs. Predator is probably the only time you ever get into the deep lore of the Predators and the culture and stuff like that.
Yep.
But what's funny about it is that despite Alien vs. Predator being this really big, popular crossover that a lot of people love and they made multiple comics over, pretty much everyone on the Alien side hated the very idea of these two series coming together. Ridley Scott was probably the most adamant person against it. He absolutely hated the very concept and did anything in his power to decanonize it any chance he got. And some people would even argue that Prometheus itself was a movie written partially due to decanonize the idea. But and it's kind of a miracle that Alien vs. Predator the film ever got made.
Oh yeah, it is a miracle. But I can kind of understand why he wouldn't want that, because I can understand like an artist like him going like, "Oh, that's schlock. I don't want to be schlock. My characters aren't schlock." Stop it, Hallie. Please get out.
I can see his point of view from it, because like when you kind of think about it, the whole concept of Alien vs. Predator is a pretty schlocky idea. Most versus ideas are kind of, schlock in the sense of, what if we put
comic book
Frankenstein versus the Wolfman? I get it.
Exactly. But I want to know your guys' thoughts. Do you think Ridley Scott and all these people against the idea, do you think they were just kind of old men, boomers, just being like, "Oh, this is stupid," or is this like they missed the potential of this story? And what Alien vs. Predator stories have you kind of interacted with? I'll start with J-Step, because I know for a fact that you got pretty deep with the Alien vs. Predator stuff.
Here's my take on it. I mean, this is the Alien vs. Predator franchise, as it is, or as it was incredibly difficult to try and even get off the ground. I remember that, when I first saw Alien vs. Predator, the video game, I'm thinking, oh man, this would be so cool to have a movie. And we didn't get one for the longest ass time. And it could be because, again, of all the logistics of, how the aliens and predators would be, which one would win, making sure that, one didn't seem overpowered over the other. And of course, was it two studios that owned Aliens and Predator, or was it the same studio?
Oh no, it was. From my understanding, it was Fox. Fox owned both of them, so that's why it kind of. It's surprising it took so long, given that they owned it. But yeah, it still made it somewhat easier.
Yeah, but I think the reason why they didn't want this to happen was not so much they didn't think it would be a cool idea, but trying to actually make it work in a way that would make everyone happy, and I put happy in quotations, was virtually impossible. Again, it's one of the reasons why it probably took 5 years just to get the first one out. And the only reason why we probably got a second one so quickly, once again, quotations, was they probably were working on both those movies at the same time, and they probably were wrapping things up as the hype from the first Alien vs. Predator was starting to die down. So I would think that I'm not so much thinking that they're being boomers about it. I think that they've had experience and realized that this could potentially be very difficult to get off the ground, much less get people on board with. And they weren't exactly wrong either. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did like Alien vs. Predator. The whole thing with the first version of the movie where they're on that Mayan temple and they're like fighting all those aliens at the same time, that was so freaking badass. And the one where the Predator is taking the alien and he's swinging it around with its tail, I was like, oh my god, this is what I've been waiting for. And then it's just like stops doing that. I'm like, motherfucker. Can we just have like the whole movie just be that dude just beating up aliens? I mean,
basically
that's
a WWE match in the middle of a Mayan temple in Antarctica between two space aliens.
Yes, that's
what
I
can describe that scene.
Yeah, this is what I'm here for. I don't care about the humans. I don't care about anyone else. I just want to see WWE, Alien versus Predator. That's what I'm here for. So
it is such a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. It is such a him movie. Like, if you're familiar with his work, it's got all his hallmarks in it.
I'm surprised.
It's the guy who did Mortal Kombat and the
Resident Evil
movies. Oh, yeah, that Milla Jovovich isn't in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised she's not in it. I'm really
his wife,
surprised
Milla
she's
Jovovich,
in that movie. Like, that's something that's always kind of.
Oh, I love the girl who's in
more
it.
of a hindsight. Oh yeah, I can't think of her name, but like, she's heavily based off.
Yeah,
the,
she's a badass
character from the AVP comics, which I always butcher her name because it's very Japanese, but basically one of my favorite comic characters of all time. But yeah, I don't want to hog too much of the talking points, so I'm gonna jump to Cody real quick about AVP.
I enjoy that film quite a bit, especially when it came out when I was a kid. Just again, it was a schlocky idea, but it's something you want to go see. It's so you know, and it was executed fine. It was again, there's a lot of cool moments. The ending's fine. It keeps pace. It does what it needed to do, which again is so surprising with all the trouble from the film standpoint. But it reminded me, but I grew up with AVP and AVP2 on PC. I played the hell out of those games, and that made it so much easier to give everybody their time to shine. You were able to give each of the paths, a good solid footing. And man, I lost hours to those games, crawling on walls as a xenomorph, stalking as the Predator, or just getting my shit kicked in and being real scared as a human.
Oh god, like
great games.
I remember those games, and it's like the genre shift between just simply playing a different character was terrifying. Like the Predator, you're basically like you're a powerhouse, but there's still some danger. The Alien, though, was easily just like you're the monster, like even more so than the Predator. Everyone's afraid of you. You're crawling on walls, but then you turn to the human. And it's just a fight for survival. Like, there's obviously there's moments in the game where, you take breaks, have quiet moments, but there's not help because it's like aliens constantly pinging around you. There's the threat of the Predator. It's insane. And it's like, I'm amazed that I even played those games as a kid because when I was younger, I hated horror games. Like, I love them now, but as a kid, I was an absolute bitch when it came to horror games.
Yeah.
Turok was scary to me.
Oh God! Oh man! But before we go all into that, I know Jay, we had this conversation earlier about the AVP Arcade, which I don't know if anyone's ever played it. Not just here, but anyone's watching too. But if anyone's ever played it, basically it's a beat 'em up. It's a Capcom side scroller beat 'em up, where it's you play as either Dutch, which is like he's like a descendant of the original Dutch. He's got like a giant cyborg arm, and he's just a huge tank.
Nice.
You have I'm so horrible with the Japanese characters' names. But there's one Japanese chick who's got like a katana. Kasumi something, yeah.
I swear she's like. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you play as two Predators, and basically the whole premise is that like you got like Neo Los Angeles or something. It's been invaded by a bunch of xenomorphs, and Dutch and Kasumi are fighting off the xenomorphs, and they're about to die when just out of nowhere a group of Predators just show up and it's just like, come with me, it's time to hunt. And that's basically the game.
I think it's something that's also
come to the chopper if you want to live.
Actually, yeah, they did say that in the before you put in the quarters, like if you're watching the demo.
Oh my God!
Says, come with us if you want to live, and then when you actually put in the quarters, it says it's come with us. It's time to hunt or something like that.
Yeah, it's like every time you put in a quarter, and I know you can do this with emulators because you have the whole like add a quarter function. You can just spam the whole time to hunt, and they'll just keep saying it over and over again, and it's like it's one of those things where it's like it's a subtle way to hype a player up, where it's like, you know, you press the start button on like a fighting game and it has like a big like clash sound. To me, that's what it always reminded me of. It's like time to hunt, but it's not like any unique voice. It's just like a robotic kind of like standard voice, but it always got me so hyped to play that game.
Oh yeah.
And one thing that's funny about
Your
that
standard
is
arcade voice.
yeah, pretty much. And I was reading into the background for that game, and so supposedly, that entire game's story concept, was supposed to be the original story for the first draft of the AVP film. It was supposed to take place in the far future, and basically it would be a team up between two human characters. I don't know if it was going to exactly be those same two, but basically they were going to team up with some predators, and they were going to try to save Earth / this city from an invasion of xenomorphs. And when you play the game, I'm sure they probably embellish some of the things for the sake of the game, but when you play the game, like, the story is very cut and dry, but it is kind of bonkers when you really think about some of the stuff that happens in it. I don't know if you remember the story, Jay, in any way.
Oh, I definitely do. Can I say it?
Oh, go right ahead.
Okay. So as the Dark Lord has said before, two humans were basically saved by three predators, although you only play as two. And at first, it looks pretty cut and dry. You basically clear the city of the aliens, and then you beat a queen, and everything looks all said and done. Everything's hunky-dory, except it's not, because all of a sudden you see humanity, because of course they did, was actually trying to herd a bunch of aliens, because why not? Because, bioweapons and crap like that. That's not going to bite them in the ass, is it? More on that later. And now these humans are now attacking your two characters and the two predators. So you have to basically fight your way through all these humans. There's some that are infected because, again, that's kind of what facehuggers do. One of the coolest parts in the game, and Sauron, you could disagree with me on this if you like, is you actually fight an infected predator. And his name is Mad Predator. And basically, he for his last hunt, he hunts you and he hunts your party pretty much. And it's so badass because, he is like redonkulously broken. Like he could teleport all over the place. He has unlimited ammo. He's like ridiculously powerful. He has a lot of stamina. So the fight with him is not only badass, but it happens on an elevator, and the music is one of the most intense themes of the whole thing. So you can already tell that I definitely love that part. But anyways, and of course, the last battle happens in space, and basically you find the human that started the whole mess in the first place. And of course, he's this big. How can I put this? He looks like the type of rich person who the only reason why anyone listens to him is because he has money, and he gets ganked in the ass. Because the queen was able to basically stick up on him, gank him, tear him in half, and there's this last battle of like some kind of Omega Queen or something like that, and it's pretty cool. And of course, because they don't want any chance that there could be any kind of xenomorphs coming for them again, they blow up the station, and it looks like the predators are giving respect to the humans that survive with them, give them this one little token. And said something around the times like, next time we meet, it's going to be a very interesting hunt. And I think Kasumi said, "What do you mean next time?" And then you see the aliens' lasers being aimed at them. They don't shoot them, but they give them the very subtle, and I say subtle as a gun, hint that they are going to be the next prey. And it's really awesome ending.
Yeah, because it's actually a good segue into like the next point, because like following the Predator 2 film and the Alien vs. Predator, basically you had this big span of just comic books and extra media, and that was essentially kind of always how it ended. Either the Predator was the antagonist, or he would team up with the humans, but at the same time it always ended with him kind of being like, all right, that was good, but the next time I'm hunting you. And basically that kind of became like this in canon, like, that's basically, if a predator liked you, that was their response to you. Like, next time I'm hunting you. And like that was supposed to be basically like you're good people. That was the Predator equivalent of you're a good person. I like you. You're cool. One day we'll fight to the death, and hopefully one of us will win. And so for like the longest time, for decades, all Predator material was nothing but comic books. And as I said before, I haven't read all of them because God, there's so many of them, but I read a good portion of them, and a lot of the best ideas of the Predators in terms of story-wise come from the comic books, in my opinion. I know we mentioned it before, but one of my all-time favorite Predator comic books, which I don't know if it counts because it is a pretty kind of out there story, but Batman versus Predator.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I got issue 1. I got all 3 issues, but issue 1 is hanging on my wall right here in front of me. And basically, like, if there's no other Predator comic or crossover you get the chance to read, let that be the one, because there's several of them. There's Batman versus Predator, Batman versus Tarzan, Batman versus Superman. God, what is replace Batman with Predator? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Everything I say with Batman, just put Predator in the place. But basically, there's a bunch of crossovers with the Predator versus blank. But by far, Batman versus Predator is probably the best of them. It's the one where it's got the simplest story. Like, there's really not much to spoil in the sense of, like, Batman's investigating murders. It turns out it's a Predator in Gotham. There you go. That's, like, the whole story. There's not really much to spoil, and honestly, there's not really much to spoil. Like, just read the book. It's amazing. But I know some people here have read it. So, Cody, have you read it?
It's been a long time, but also I gotta take off. I got early work. I really appreciate you folks. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Man, there's no problem. And also, I mean, if you want to plug your comic, you can go and do that right now, because I know I put the link in the description.
Well, I appreciate that. If folks are interested in other comics, I do Weird Space West. I do kind of more think PC, but with a good amount of action with an immortal cowboy in some armor. Check that out, IronVerseComics.com or Jack Iron Steel Cowboy on Kickstarter. I'd appreciate your eyes. We've got just about under a week left, so if you folks would like to check that out, I'd appreciate that as well. And thank you so much for having me.
All right, man. Thanks for being on, man. Catch you later. All right, so someone got quiet.
Oh, I think he must have had the mic on the entire time, and he might not have quite a good a mic as we have. No disrespect, dude, if you see the end of this.
No, it's all good. It was just for a brief moment, like my entire computer just went kind of silent. But I think that was me mostly.
All right.
So I'm gonna jump to Jay because Soggy, have you even read Batman vs. Predator? Because I know I've had this conversation with Jay. Uh-oh, she's silent.
Uh-oh.
We can't hear you.
Oh my God, I sat on it. I could have been talking this whole time, but I sat on the frickin' mute button.
Oh,
Fun.
I wonder if that's what I heard.
Great. Yeah, that could have been it. No, I've not. The last time I tried to read a DC comic, it was the Green Party, and it pissed me off. I really don't. Yeah. I don't really read comics, and I hate the ads. Oh wait, I read the Flintstones. The Flintstones is good, but I read it first online without the ads. Let's just say I found it on 4chan.
Okay. Well, that could be an interesting conversation for another time. But
ads in comics, how they ruined the flow. Oh, the Flintstones. Yeah, the Flintstones great.
Yeah.
Ads in comics too. That's a whole nother chat because I had an issue with that the other day. But I'll jump to Jay when it comes to Batman versus Predator.
Oh yeah, when you're ready, I'll definitely be able to give a summary on that.
Oh, here, let me share the screen. I'm actually drawing again, and that should take up the. That should be like a 4th spot. There you go.
All right.
Allow that. I'll draw while he talks.
All right. So go ahead. Oh Jesus. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, so for those of you who have not seen Alien versus Predator, Alien versus Predator, Predator versus Batman. Now we got it right. It's a pretty interesting story. It has definitely a lot of Batman vibes to it, specifically 90s Batman vibes. Very cool thing. But it also feels very true to the whole Predator thing. The short version, Predator comes to Gotham and starts. He actually uses the TV to pick his victims, his prey. So he somewhat understands that the best fighter in all of Gotham is going to be this one boxer, because basically all of Gotham was watching this. This boxer won the fight, and he's the first one that the Predator goes after. Batman does his usual thing, of course, and as he's doing the detective work, he starts learning the rules of the Predator, which is actually pretty cool. And then the Predator goes after the loser guy, or the person who lost the fight next, because of course he does. And once he's done with that, once he's done with that, basically, again, anytime the Predator sees someone on TV, that's the person he goes after next. So he sees this mobster, he goes after him. He sees this other mobster, he goes after him. He sees James Gordon on the TV, and he starts to go after him. James Gordon, of course, because he's James Gordon, is probably the only one that survives, and that's because a cop basically sacrificed herself to get him out of there. And he escapes, thank goodness. And Batman tries to go after him, not knowing who he is, and basically has just as much luck with him as Dutch did. And we all know how that went. So the second time, and one thing that was kind of interesting about this is there's always been this kind of, I'm not sure if it's a running joke, running idea, running gag, that if you give Batman time to plan, he could beat anybody. And now that he knew what he was going up against, he made this special armor just to go against the Predator. And it was so freaking badass to see the Predator and Batman in full, almost Tony Starkish gear go after the Predator. It was just insane. He kind of
flat out admits that, like, he can't beat this thing on his own.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, a little caveat I forgot to put there. Thank you, Sauron. And eventually the fight ends up going to Wayne Manor. And it's kind of interesting because what ends up happening is Alfred, it looks like the Predator is about to get him. And Alfred, who has no problem using guns, basically shot the Predator. And that was so freaking cool. And there was one part of there, like, oh fuck, he's gonna die, and the Predator grabs onto him, and he's like, "Don't worry, sir, I'm not afraid of this big brute, this bully." And I don't know what basically. Oh yeah, Batman basically tranked the Predator's ass to try and basically capture him alive. And by that point, when he grabbed Alfred, he was already high as a kite. So he's basically realizes, oh man, I am completely fucked. I need to get out of here. And one part that was really cool is everyone here knows about the Predators and their love for trophies, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Predator walked into a room that basically had all of the trophies that were gathered by the previous the previous Wayne. So like they had like this huge trophy room where Waynes have hunted wild game for a long time or something like that. And when he opens the door, all these trophies come at his face, and he's like, "What trophies? Oh fuck, I got to get the hell out of here." Although for him, it's like, "Get out." And then they have that last fight. He ends up, I think. He doesn't kill the Predator. The Predator decides to go with honorable suicide, and Batman gets a trophy from all the Predators, very similar to that of Predator 2, as the Predators basically stop him from doing the final kill. And that's where it ends on that particular book. It ended up being a good read. Again, if you could find it, it's awesome to see all the wonderful artwork and everything else.
Oh God, yes, the artwork is amazing. Like, if nothing else, like, the artwork in that book is top notch. Like, it stands up even today, in the sense of like just like, I would say it's one of the best looking comics I've read in my life.
Yeah, and it was one of the best comics I read in the '90s. And again, the '90s had Infinity War, they had Nightfall, they had so many great stories. But looking back on it, my favorite probably is Batman versus Predator. So I know that probably sounds sacrilegious for some people, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, because we won't go too far into it because there's so much, but basically just know that following the success of Batman vs. Predator, they had 2 sequels: Batman vs Predator 2, I think Bloodsport, and then Batman vs Predator 3, Blood Ties or something like that. But they're fine, but the quality does kind of dip down in the sense that, like, at some point it kind of gets to the point where, because each story is canon to each other, like it's all one kind of shared side universe, and every time it's like in the first one it's like those monsters, Batman's like, those monsters know not to show back up in my city again, and then Batman vs Predator 2 happens, and what do you know, the Predator shows back up in Gotham. However, there's a funny story behind that one, is that supposedly, this was a thing I read a while back. I don't know if it's canon to the story, so take it with a grain of salt. But in Batman vs Predator 2, supposedly, the Predator that comes to Gotham looking for Batman specifically is the blood brother of the Predator he defeated in the first one.
Ooh.
And that's why he's there in Gotham hunting him. Not because of an honorable duel, but for revenge. Which, for anyone who's read a Predator comic with the lore, is that that's a big no-no for Predators. Is that once someone is beat, unless there's like certain criterias, but for the most part, you can't just actively hunt someone based on like revenge. Mm-hmm. And there's even like a subplot where like the brother Predators coming to Gotham to hunt Batman, but at the same time, 2 other Predator enforcers, which is basically like the cops of the Predator lore, are there hunting the brother Predator. And it doesn't really go anywhere as far as like in the story, so that's why I'm like, I don't know if it's really that canon. I don't know if it's just kind of like a implied lore to it. But that little context is kind of, at least for me, makes that story seem a bit more interesting. And I think Huntress shows up as well, like she's in the story as well. Quite a bit, actually. I think she's like, yeah, she's in it for pretty much the entire story. And then Batman vs Predator 3 is basically Batman and Robin versus a Predator and his son. And like the Predator's using Robin as his son's first true kill. So that's pretty interesting. But overall, the stories, like, you know, they get less and less
diminishing returns.
Yeah, like it gets to a point where it's like, all right, we get it. Yeah.
Okay, if you're not
there
looking
we go.
at the screen,
it's not like I want to hunt you, Baka.
Oh God!
You guys are not a freaking Predator. I love this so much. Oh my God! Is it copyright infringement if we put her in the game? Not. I mean, eventually.
I have to modify her a little a little slightly, but could I do a tsundere girl who's got like hair very similar to her and some gnarly teeth? Yeah. I might give her a mouth that might look more like Melina's, but yeah.
Or now hear me out. This is a fun Predator lore fact for you here, is that in the Predator canon, there are female Predators. What they look like is kind of debatable depending on which lore, who's telling the story. But for the most part, they are very aggressive females who actively will kind of not necessarily beat their partners to death, but they are. It's essentially the whole Predator mating ritual is supposed to be a bloody, brutal one. So honestly, even if you didn't make her a full-on orc, it would still fit the setting.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, yeah. Just damn.
I just have an idea that that's going to go in a weird direction eventually. There too.
I mean, it kind of. Oh well, I mean, both in the story of the Soggy's game, and in this context of the Predator lore, it's already gone pretty weird because, like, and this is a side tangent because just before we segue into Predators, but as a side tangent, in the first depiction of a female Predator ever was in a comic book. Obviously, I can't think of the name of it because it's been years since I read it, but basically, in the comic, there is no discernible difference, outwards discernible difference between a male predator and a female predator. Like, there's literally no in that comic. There was no difference, and I think this is me speculating that I think that they were trying to insinuate that any of the predators that you saw in the film could have been male or female.
I like that idea. I really do like that
kinda,
idea.
I mean, it's kind of a cool idea. The only downside is that, like, they don't really touch upon female predators in the comics. They'll mention them from time to time, but it's not something they kind of dive into. So when they later do introduce another female predator or more female predators, they very clearly, like, said, all right, we're not sticking with that because, like, for whatever reason. And so they kind of depicted them as simply, like, you know, the predators look like mask on, distance, you know, buff male humans. Female predators are pretty much slender, kind of buff female, like, outward appearance. The difference is being, you know, the face. They got a very predator face.
Oh yeah.
And I know Predator Hunting Grounds, the PS4 game, and I think it's on PC too, where they introduce, like, you play as a predator and you can play as a female predator as well, which is cool. I'll admit that is a cool thing. Lore-wise, that's not really accurate because it's like the female predators, they hunt, but not necessarily like the males. Like, for the males, it's very much like a sports honor thing. For the females, they hunt, but it's not really for a sport honor thing. It's more like a territorial, like more of a defense kind of thing. But they're just as strong as the males. So that's something that's always presented.
Like samurai wives.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Yeah, it makes me think of them. Yeah, it makes me think of samurai wives. Yeah, because they were, I can't remember the name of the weapon, but they're trained in a long pole staff with very much a sword tip on the end of it. And girls still, not the Naginata. And you can still, I love Naginata performances because the girls are in full kimono kicking ass. It's awesome. Really cool. I love the blending of power and feminine arts at the same time. I really hate it when people try to completely denounce anything slightly soft or girly in any way. It's like, come on. They make pink guns. We can be girly and masculine all at the same time.
Yeah, because, like, I mean, even in, like, I was kind of backtracking here a bit, but even in, like, in the AVP comic, the first comic, where they introduce I can never think of her name off the top of my head, but the human who eventually kind of basically no, not Kasumi.
I gotta go, guys. I gotta go help my parents.
Okay,
I don't know if I'll be back. I gotta help them load.
All right, we'll be on for a few. Okay.
Okay. Wow, that was.
I get it. She probably had to help him with an emergency kind of thing. So
totally understand.
All right, we'll finish up here because we only got like 2 more movies to go over.
Okay.
But I'll go ahead and jump into the next one. So basically, the long period of basically just comic books, games, and stuff like that. And it wasn't until about 2010 did we finally get a 3rd installment to the Predator series. And I don't know if you could see my hands, which I realize you can't, but I was basically going to do air quotes because it's technically a 3rd film, even though it doesn't really have much to do with the other 2 films other than a mention of the first film's events. But 2010, they had the release of Predators. And a lot of people were excited for it because it was the first Predator movie since AVP 1 and 2, which, you know, didn't really get the best reviews overall. And so movie comes out, and for the most part, most people are kind of like, you know, this is all right. It's not as good as the first movie, but it's definitely like an improvement. You had what's his name, Adrian Brody, which I know a lot of people, myself included, you know, kind of see him as being a little too skinny, a little too scrawny to be going up against a Predator, especially considering that in the film they have what they call super predators, which are supposed to be bigger and tougher versions of the previous Predators. But for the most part, I would say it's a pretty standard flick. It's very much like a back to basics kind of movie for the Predators, the Predator, in the sense that, like, it is very much like that first movie in the sense of like you have a group of badass warriors who are now being hunted by an even bigger badass. But you know, there's a couple of smaller differences here or there.
I do have a question, if I may ask.
Yo.
Okay, so Adrian Brody definitely is a little bit on the smaller side. Does he actually try to fight the Predator like one-on-one, like fist to fist?
So it's a bit of a tricky subject because technically no.
Okay.
Because the movie, it's a bit of a spoiler, but it's literally been 10 years. So in the film, you got these 3 super predators, and each one, you know, they're like massive dudes. Like they're bigger than the average predator, which, you know, the average predator is already big as hell. But then when you get to like the end of the movie, you have one predator left, which is supposed to be the alpha among these super predators. I think his code name is like Berserk. He's the one with the bone jaw on his mask, which in my opinion is the coolest predator design we've had since the original.
Okay.
But basically the final fight it's almost a beat for beat of the original final fight in the sense where he covers himself in mud. He's lit a fire to kind of help distract the predator, keep his gaze, and basically he's using a bunch of hit and run tactics on the predator as opposed to fighting him head on. Granted, like throughout the final act of the film, this final predator, he gets a lot of hits. Like,
okay, good.
He gets shanked multiple times in the collar by one dude. He fights another smaller predator for a brief moment. He gets blown up by a bunch of grenades. He gets shot with a sniper rifle, which, in my opinion,
holy shit.
In my opinion, like, all right, they've earned this kill. Excuse me. It's not like he just went out like a bitch. But at the same time, I can still kind of see people saying where it's like, I think the problem is like a lot of that stuff is kind of spaced out throughout the final act. They don't kind of happen immediately back to back with each other. And I don't think it helps that the final act ultimately is essentially the same thing as the first film, where it's like he covered himself in mud. So, but at the same time, I do think it's a little bit of a not unwarranted criticism, but I do think it is a bit too harsh, if that makes sense.
All right, well, that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair.
I don't know. Have you seen Predators?
Unfortunately, that was the only one I did not have a chance to see before this one. I'm very proud of that. Well, it seems like, but you're all giving it good reviews, so I'm going to check it out either sometime tomorrow or the day after. Originally, I want to take a look at it before the stream, but work got really, really heavy today. Mostly because, you know, Memorial Holiday is coming up Monday, so we had to basically make up the work today. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But, you know, free Monday.
Yeah, I mean, like, of all the Predator sequels, I mean, aside from 2, obviously, when it comes to, like, AVP 1 and 2, Predators, The Predator, Predators is easily number 3, like, by far.
All right. There was a reason why I asked this question, too, which we'll get to a little bit later, because there's one part that I want to talk about after we talk about The Predator.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, just to kind of close it up, because there is a tie-in I'm going to add to The Predator as well. So, in 2018, or probably before that, whenever they announced it, it was announced that Shane Black, a guy who was in the original Predator classic film, and who also did some small writing work for the original film, was set to direct a 4th Predator movie. People were excited. People were ecstatic that Shane Black, someone who worked on the original film, was a part of it. And, you know, a lot of people were just generally excited to see a new Predator movie. Then it came out.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've already mentioned it earlier in the stream, but literally 0 votes went to The Predator as being someone's favorite Predator sequel. And why I think everyone, I think a lot of times people can say, you know, opinions are subjective. I think it's an objective fact that The Predator is the worst of the Predator films.
Damn.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Have you seen The Predator?
That one I have not seen either. I'm sorry about that again.
All right, so it's all good. I mean, because, you know, honestly, like, of all the films to not watch, that's definitely the one. But, like, the basic concept is that, like, God, there's so much So it's essentially supposed to be like, it ties all the other movies together. Like they make direct references to Predator 1 and 2. No direct reference to Predators, which, kind of makes sense given how Predator's story was completely on a different planet. But basically, it's supposed to be like you have this American Special Forces sniper guy who is on a mission with his crew, and out of nowhere, a Predator ship crash lands in front of him in the middle of his mission. And basically, he gets caught up in the mission in the fight between this Predator. The Predator gets captured, but before he gets captured, he manages to sneak away with like this little piece of Predator technology. And oh god, like the whole movie is so hard to describe because it's an absolute mess. There's a lot of like little things where they try to basically. It's one of those where it's like each Predator sequel. And I know we kind of talked about earlier where it comes to like 80 sequels where it's like they take like the original concept of a movie, which is like pretty kind of, I won't say small, but it's kind of cut and dry. It's very straightforward with what it is. But then the sequel comes along and it's like a big, bombastic, adds a bunch of extra stuff to the movie that was either kind of hinted at in the first movie or wasn't there at all, but the sequel kind of adds to it. This is like that movie times 10.
I see.
So yeah, you got like basically they recontext. So in the Predator 2, I don't know if you remember those government agents that were hunting the Predator, Gary Busey's character.
Yeah, I remember
So
those dudes.
yeah, so I mean in Predator 2 they were basically just government suits. Like they never had like an official name. They didn't really need one. It was just government was trying to capture an alien. In the Predator, they introduced them, and it's kind of hinted that they're the same group. I mean, Gary Busey's son is literally playing like a member of the organization, so it's like implied that it's the same group. But they call themselves Stargazer, and basically, I don't know if ancient is the right word, but they're an old organization that had been tracking and hunting predators for decades.
Okay.
And their whole goal is to capture the predators, study them, reverse engineer their technology, all that good jazz. And while it's all right on paper, it does kind of like, especially when you kind of consider just the films, because for the most part, when it comes to like the comics later on, a lot of them simply aren't canon. Like, as much as I love a lot of them just simply aren't canon, or they're written in a way where it doesn't really matter. However, in the movie, they don't really acknowledge the comic books. They acknowledge the first two films.
Mm-hmm.
But they act like the predators have been coming to Earth so many times. And when you watch the first two films, you don't really get that sense. Not necessarily like they've been coming here for like enough times for a U.S. government agency to catch on to them and start hunting them down to the point where they actually managed to capture one of them. And then, oh gosh, it's so hard to describe this film in the sense that it basically like it recontextualizes a lot of stuff that was established in the original Predator films to the point where it kind of ruins, I guess you could say, the lore and the mystique that came before.
Well, that's disappointing. Now I can see why a lot of people weren't exactly big fans of it.
And I think the best example is the reveal in the film is that the predators have been basically upgrading themselves every time they come to Earth. Because in the first two films, first all of the films prior to this, it was established essentially that the predators took trophies because, that's just what they do. They took the head and spine of somebody because that was the trophy of their kill.
Mm-hmm.
In The Predator, however, they recontextualize it to where it's like they're not just taking trophies, they're taking the spinal columns so they can study the DNA of what they killed and then add that DNA to their own.
What? Huh?
Right. And it's like, wait, what? Like, that's why they're taking spinal cords? Like, you already, like, the original idea of them just being game hunters and they're taking a spinal cord and head as a trophy, like, that was it. That's all you needed. all the extra stuff, it's like, why? Like, why?
I'm sorry. I think my brain actually had to reset itself from the stupidity of that statement because wow, not on your end, but basically the story.
I know, but it's like,
I had to make sure it was clear.
yeah.
You explained very clearly, so, and that's what made me hurt so much.
No, because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it. Because rewatching it, it's like when I rewatched it, I was like looking carefully to see if there was something I was missing. But no, they've been coming to the planet for centuries, and whenever they kill someone, they harvest their spinal cords and DNA to add to their own, to make them stronger. And
that seems like cheating, man.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like, well, that kind of ruins the simplicity of the predators and their motivations. Like, even with the context of them being super ancient, this really old race of warriors, like, for them to have such kind of a very simple motivation, you know, like, I know that might seem kind of cheap to some people, but to me that was like a very, like, it helped ground the concept in reality enough for you to kind of wrap your head around it and kind of be intrigued by it. Like, here's a super advanced race of aliens. They can travel to the stars in seconds. They have the ultimate cloaking technology. They can turn the world's greatest warriors into mincemeat in minutes. But at the end of the day, they're game hunters.
Mm-hmm. Something I kind of want to put into this, and that's kind of one of those things that's kind of makes this just seem out of place. So for those who might not know the lore too much, one thing that's explained in the comics that's really interesting and somewhat in Alien versus Predator is that when the predators want to hunt, particularly the xenomorphs, they'll try to find them on worlds that they already exist. But if they don't exist or they're a little bit running low, the predators will intentionally kidnap like a queen or something like that, or a couple face huggers, and basically put them on some rando planet and basically let the aliens go to town, get strong, and then hunt them afterwards. But at least that was established in the lore, and it kind of made sense on why they would do that, even though it's a total dick move. But this thing with the DNA, again, I've read a lot of the comics, I've seen a good chunk of the movies, but I've never heard them ever do anything like that. I just thought they were just trying to be extra with the spinal columns.
Yeah, because like you said with the aliens, and the concept is that, like, that's something that's been touched on, and it's even like I think later it gets conceptualized where it's like only certain clans will do that. Some of them will kind of like they'll make like alien farms, quote unquote, where they kind of like let the aliens kind of be their own thing, but not every predator clan just essentially dropped them off on a planet full of people. Like, they had like rules when it came to it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, in my opinion, like, to me, the limiting it to a specific clan and adding rules to it kind of kept the mystique going, because this is they did establish that this is a species. It's not just one creature, and they all have personalities and stuff. But then in the Predator, like, I'm sure they probably would retcon this later if they ever had the chance, given how much people hated it. But I could see them like kind of reconceptualizing that as like, oh, this is just this one clan's practice. But they don't really present it as that. They present it as, oh no, these predators just do this. This is just what they do. And then the immediate question I have is like, well, why did they leave Danny Glover behind?
Yeah, I mean, he was the ultimate fighter during that time, of course.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, well, they're trying to collect the best DNA. Why would they collect the best DNA of the people who they were easily beating? Like, here's Danny Glover, a guy who defeated a predator in a one-on-one fight. Why would you not take his spinal cord? And then it's like, well, that's their whole code of honor. But then, like, but why bother? Like, that doesn't seem like, it doesn't really seem to fit with the whole, oh, they're upgrading themselves with everyone else's DNA. That doesn't seem to fit with the code of honor thing. Like you know, they kind of present the rest of it as. And so and then this all leads to probably the dumbest, well, yeah, at least the two dumbest other plot points of this film. The first one being the assassin predator, or the ultimate predator. So because every modern day movie needs to take a monster and be like, well, this one was so dangerous. Now there's a bigger monster that's even more dangerous and more badass. They introduce us to what can be described as, quote unquote, the ultimate predator. It's this giant 10-foot tall abomination of CGI. He doesn't even wear a single bit of armor. He's got an exoskeleton underneath his skin.
Ew.
That's a quote from the movie. An exoskeleton underneath his skin. If anyone doesn't know, exoskeleton literally means on the outside. For him to have an exoskeleton in his skin is just a skeleton at that point, technically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But, and of course, like, he shows up. So the movie starts with the classic Predator. Like, the classic Predator is the quote-unquote villain of the film. You get to see some cool action scenes. I'll admit, the action scenes with him, while some of them are dumb, they do have some coolness to them. I will give him that. He shows up, he's wrecking house, he's destroying all these humans, he's taking them out. And then the ultimate Predator shows up, and he just decimates him in like a couple of hits. And basically kind of just rips off his head and spine, tosses him on the ground. And it's just like it's such. I might be looking too into it, but it's such an obvious like, I'm the big monster now, I'm the alpha now kind of thing. And it's one of those where I feel like I don't think I've ever met a single person who said that was like a ultimately cool idea. I've seen people try to reconceptualize it into something better, but for the most part, I've never seen a Predator fan say like, that was great, that was awesome. That was the perfect thing they could have added to the lore.
I'm just beginning to think that people shouldn't make any media in Hollywood for at least another 5 years. Because what the damn hell?
For every terrible movie, it needs to add like another 2 years to it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's not that the whole movie industry is completely without hope. I mean, look at what happened with Sonic the Hedgehog. Might not be a perfect movie, but at least they freaking listened, and they, did a much better job than what they were originally planning. So it shows that, maybe there's not a loss of hope entirely, but with movies like The Predator, and what's coming up, it's like, do you want us to lose faith again? Because you're going to make us lose faith again, Hollywood. For those who don't know, Sauron, you want to get into this, or you want me to do this?
I'll let you get into it, but I just want to make this one last plot point for the Predator, and this is probably the most egregious one of all. So I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. Basically, in the film, the main human character, he has a son who's autistic, and yet he is somehow able to, basically they try to say that his autism allows him to translate and operate Predator technology flawlessly. Like, okay. No questions whatsoever. And so when the ultimate Predator finally catches up with the humans, he's basically hunting down this kid who has like this piece of Predator technology, or like the key to it. Mm-hmm. And so basically he's hunting the kid, and then when they finally get to the end of the film and they finally have the confrontation, the Predator, using a stupid robot computer voice to talk for him, is basically like, I'm going to hunt you. And what's his name? McGunna, or whatever his last name is. He's going to be your leader. He is the ultimate warrior among you. If you you will fight me, I will claim your trophies. And if you lose, then I will take him, basically. And so, everyone's like, all right, so he's talking about like the main hero character. The fight happens. They're being hunted in the woods. It's an absolute mess, like action-wise. It's an absolute mess. And then when he finally catches up to the main hero character, and he's like getting ready to capture him, what does he do? No, he captures his son instead and drags him back to the ship. And then, obviously he's like, why would he want my son? And basically, oh, fucking God. Basically, the ultimate Predator, wants to capture the kid because of his autism. And because he was able to use that and translate Predator language. Mm-hmm. And Oh, sorry. I don't. Did we go over Requiem? Oh man, I don't know. We went over AVP.
Yeah, we went over AVP in general, I think. So.
I kind of no. We kind of skipped over AVP just because it's kind of a Predator sequel, not really.
Mm-hmm.
I know we kind of briefly went over it. If we probably won't have time to, but we did kind of go over it. So
yeah.
But sorry about that.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, basically and I know this is where the joke comes from. Like in the Predator, they were trying to weaponize autism. Like that's literally the plot of the story.
Wow,
and
this really has nothing going for it, does it?
No, it really doesn't. Like even when watching it, like I'll admit I laughed. Like there were funny moments in the movie. Like they had some somewhat decent action scenes occasionally, but for the most part, it's like this is just dumb. Like this is not even like the dumb in a fun way. This is just dumb in a dumb way. And then this is the final point I'll make for this film is that like before the film came out, The Predator. I won't go into the whole controversy behind why the movie was heavily edited because that's a whole nother discussion. We'll be here all night.
Yeah, I think I heard about one actress had a problem.
Yeah, where like. Okay. Yeah,
I know.
You have to look it up because that's a whole other issue. But
I know
basically, there was talks about whether this movie was a sequel to Predators, and so I think it was Shane Black or someone on the team said that like, what do you call it? This movie takes place before Predators, and that kind of at first when that was said, it's kind of oh well maybe this is going to lead into what happens in Predators. Then you watch the film, and not a single thing happens in that movie that would even remotely lead up to Predators. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So then it got me thinking, like, what could he have meant by that? Like, in what context could he have possibly meant by that? Was he just saying that, or what? Which that could be a very well Hollywood thing. But then it got me thinking. In Predators, the three main predators are super predators.
Oh yeah.
It never goes into where they came from. There's like a subtle hint where it's like one of the characters describes them as like it's a difference between dogs and wolves. So I always thought it's like, oh, this is just a different breed of predator. Like they're cousins essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got me thinking, well, what if these super predators are supposed to be the final evolution, quote unquote, of that ultimate predator?
Huh.
And I was like. I mean, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, that kind of retroactively makes them look dumber too. Because that's like it kind of ruins it because it's like, oh, well, they're not these somewhat bigger breed of predators who are just a bit more violent. No, they're literally bioengineered predators who use human DNA to make themselves look like these abominations. And it's like, all right, you just retroactively ruined what was easily the next best thing about that movie, which was the awesome predator designs. Not the faces underneath, but the concept of them at the very least. So, but yeah, ultimately, The Predator, Predator 4, it's a mess. If there ever was a movie to not watch, it's that.
Well, thanks for the heads up on that one.
Oh, that's to everyone. I tell everyone that. Like, even if you're a hardcore Predator fan, like, unless you just want to see how bad it can be, that's it. But don't go in there expecting anything redeeming.
Well, I just found out today, ironically, before the stream opened, that Predators, the plural, is actually on Hulu. So I didn't know that beforehand. If I did, I would have watched it. So again, apologies about that. So I know what movie I'm going to see, and it's going to be Predators with the plural.
Yeah, like if they're ever once you get to that, just stop. Like, don't bother with anything else. Go read the comic books. Go play the games. As far as you're concerned, the series ends there.
Kind of like how Terminator 2 Judgment Day ends at 2. It really just ends at 2.
Yeah, it ends at 2. Like, there was nothing else after that. Everything else was just a bad dream Sarah Connor had right before the final confrontation with the T-1000.
Yep. Ah, boy. But you know what? Even as bad as The Predator sounds, the other one that's coming up sounds worse.
Oh, yeah. And, okay, so to end it all off.
Of course.
This is the end, and I hate to end on the. I'll try to end on a positive note, but as I'm sure anyone is aware, Disney recently bought several properties from Fox. 2 of those properties were Alien and Predator. Originally, people were kind of nervous about like the future of these franchises, especially considering that like Alien was kind of in the middle of a prequel trilogy, which for better or worse, Ridley Scott was trying to see his way through. That's a whole nother discussion for another day. But Predator, on the other hand, they recently had the Predator debacle, and it was kind of like, well, I mean, could you really get any worse than that? And then, sure enough, Disney basically took Pocahontas, fused it with Milan, and threw a Predator in there, and basically said, "This is your Predator 5." And oh god, like I don't have the article because I'm sure I could find it if I really look hard enough. But basically, it's just like the time period is kind of up for debate as to where it takes place. I'm sure it kind of takes place a little further in the past, but basically, you have a young 18-year-old girl who's living in an Native American tribe, who they kind of have, as they say, backwards views on gender norms, and she tries to break free from it. So when her tribe gets brought under attack by a predator, it's up to her to basically stop the predator. And it's like, are you kidding me? This is your Predator 5.
How much you want to bet they're going to pull up Birds of Prey and have very accommodating stuntmen to basically let this new heroine basically fight on equal terms with this predator?
Oh god, yeah. They'll try to say oh, well, she's smaller than him, but she's more agile than him. It's like, you do understand, like, the original Predator's base actor was a dancer. Like, their agility is like it's a well canonized thing. Like, their size means nothing. Like, agility means nothing. They're just as agile. And then it always reminds me of like the common joke I saw with like way back before Infinity War was like brought out, when people were talking about like the Avengers versus Thanos. And it's like, let's be real here. Characters like Hawkeye and Black Widow aren't going to do shit. Like, Black Widow's going to try to do that neck scissors thing to Thanos, and he's just going to throw her into the sun. And it's like, that's basically what's going to happen if a anybody, girl or boy, fought a predator in a one-on-one fight. They're getting tossed into the freaking sun.
And unless she has one of his weapons, it's going to be a very quick fight.
Yeah, because
especially if it's supposed to be like before, guns were something that you could shoot more than just one bullet within a minute's time.
Yeah, and I know I saw this. I don't know who said it. I know I read this somewhere, and if I don't know, I doubt they're watching this because I don't remember who it was. But like, to be fair, they were trying to say like, well, I mean, in Predator 1, the classic, Dutch, he basically fought the Predator without any weapons or any conventional weapons towards the end. It was all like bows and arrows, traps and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but then a lot of those traps just they barely worked. Like, it was basically catching the predator by surprise, and then when the predator finally caught on to the game, it was pretty much over. He only beat the predator basically because he baited him into a very like he dropped a tree on him. Like,
oh yeah,
like, and even that didn't necessarily kill the predator. It crippled him.
I wonder if they'll take some cues from the comic where he fights a Native American. Remember how the guy who was the Native American figured out that predators are heavy as hell. So if you drop them from a high amount and they are high height and they don't expect it, they could get like seriously hurt.
Yeah. So because again, it goes back to the Predator comics where it's essentially, if you want good Predator stories, the comics are your best bet. Aside from the first movie, the comics are going to be your best bet. But basically, there's several instances where they have like someone who kind of is less powerful than the Predator go up against him, and they always try to do like, kind of the clever ways to beat him. And it's usually kind of results into the same thing. They set up traps for the Predator that he doesn't see coming because they're so primitive, quote unquote. But it's like, even then, for the most part, it's not like it's a simple pitfall into a thing of spikes. It's, for any decent Predator story has it, it's a pretty substantial trap. It's not like something anyone could do, like lugging a giant tree or digging a giant pit or sacrificing yourself with a bunch of explosives to get the predator. Like, it's a small feat. And so basically to sit here and be like, well, here's this teenage girl who's like straight up 18 years old, just coming of age, and she's trying to fight a predator, a full-grown, massive predator who, at their base level of strength, could beat Arnold Schwarzenegger like he was a little bitch.
Yep.
It's like, I'm sorry, but you're really pushing the envelope here when it comes to what I'm supposed to be expecting from this film.
Again, the only reason why Danny Glover was able to beat him was because he had his blade. He had his technology, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to swing a blade around.
Yeah, and he cut off his arm, and even then, the Predator was still kind of kicking his ass at the end of the fight. Predator was literally one-handed, got roughed up by all sorts of shit in that warehouse fight, but it still was not like, it was basically all that was to lead up to him being able to one-on-one the Predator, not so much as like just one-on-one him right off the bat.
Yep.
Like, he shot him multiple times with a shotgun in the belly and the chest, and he still was running around, moving around. So it's like, it's one of those where it's like, don't get me wrong, I love the Predator franchise. If you learn nothing else from this stream, that should be your takeaway from this. I love Predator. That's like my favorite film, favorite series, favorite comic, favorite characters, whatever you want to call it. But I want these films to be good. Like, even with the Predator, like, I bought it on Blu-ray simply because I love Predator and I want the franchise and the series to somewhat continue.
Yeah, same here. We don't want another woke fate to happen that basically tanks the franchise.
Yeah. And that also, that kind of, this is completely conspiracy theory. So one thing I always thought about is, like, when it comes to like these kind of 80s icon action films, you have Terminator, Alien, and Predator. These three films that are kind of like, they're basically compared to each other when it comes to like their series progression, where the first film is basically a pseudo or straight up horror film with characters going up against essentially an unstoppable monster. They beat it by the skin of their teeth, but it is simply, it's not one of those where it's like, it's a very humbling victory. Like, a lot of people died. It was not an easy win. And ultimately, you're still kind of terrified of the monster you just faced. Then you have the sequel, where it's a lot bigger, it's a lot more bombastic. The creature returns, it's either upgraded, there's more of them, or it's just simply a bigger and stronger version of the last one. However, when it comes to those three franchises, Alien and Terminator are well known for having two of the most iconic characters in all of cinema history, between Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor. I can't remember the lady who plays her. Yeah, but I can't remember the actress's name.
Oh, Linda Hamilton.
Linda Hamilton, yes. So, literally, and not despite what you want to say about like them being ladies, like regardless of that, they are probably the most iconic characters of all time in terms of film.
Yes.
Just absolute badasses. Some of them even fought Predators in their own comic tie-ins, but that's a whole other story. However, Predator, on the other hand, has never really had that one single badass that's carried throughout the films. Like, you got Dutch, who, a lot of people, they consider him to be the coolest human character when it comes to the Predators, aside from
his brother, who actually could stand toe-to-toe with the Predator and actually hold his own.
Right. And
but, if you haven't read the comic, you have no idea who that is.
Right. And so the Predator franchise has never had that, and they certainly have never had like a female lead for that. They don't need that. Don't get me wrong. They don't need that, but they've never had that. And so part of me, and again, this is pure speculation, part of me thinks that one of the reasons why they came up with this version of Predator 5 is so they could finally have that kind of character.
Oh, boy.
That badass female lead who, despite the odds, was able to defeat what was essentially an unstoppable monster.
Yeah, that is true. You know who would have been awesome for that? The woman from Alien versus Predator, the one that survived in the first one.
Yes.
They made it almost look like, okay, they're going to go with the comic storyline where the Predators will actually pick her up, and she'll be part of their tribe, and eventually she'll go back to Earth. But for a time, she'll live with these Predators and basically not only kick ass, but actually hold their own.
So yeah, this is I can never say her name properly, and I don't want to butcher it, but basically in the original, this is what the film version is based on. In the comics, she's she's pretty much like a Weyland-Yutani desk jockey who ended up having to fight alongside a predator in order to survive, and eventually kind of embraced their culture and essentially became a human predator, hunted with them for I think a couple of years or so.
Yeah, well, it's part of the reason why she became that was because of that mark you see on her forehead. For those of you who are looking at the screen, the predator she fought with gave her that mark, and because of that, she got special privileges. Like one thing that a lot of people don't know, when it comes to the hierarchy of the predators, most of them don't actually have living quarters. The only ones who have living quarters are anyone that basically earned it through lots of glorious kills and successful hunts. But because I guess she was left as his successor, she got her own living quarters, which was a good idea because she's freaking human.
Yeah, and the predators are super racist against humans. It's I guess you can see it as kind of like a sexist undertone, but it's very much no, they don't like humans. They don't like the idea that a human is hunting alongside them.
Yeah.
But basically, if they really wanted their own iconic, not just lead, but iconic female lead, one that could stand the test of time, this was the character to do it with.
Yeah.
She literally fights alongside a predator, basically becomes friends with him. I think Broken Tusk is his name. And he didn't just give her that mark. That's the mark they get for slaying a xenomorph in a one-on-one fight. And so she kills a xenomorph. She eventually kills a queen xenomorph as well, I think with the help of the predator. So he gives her that mark. So when the predators arrive to kind of clean up the mess, they see that mark and they straight up kind of just salute her and go about their way. And then sometime later, they come back and they straight up invite her to come join the hunt with them. And at that point, all her family, all her friends were pretty much dead at that point. So she straight up just joins with them.
Mm-hmm.
And she remains a character in the AVP comics for quite a few years, actually. I know the first few arcs of the Predator AVP comics kind of tells her story of hunting with them, eventually kind of breaking away from the clan, trying to become a human once again. And then I know they had the event Predator 3 World War, where it pretty much ties her story up in the sense where she finally kind of abandons the Predator lifestyle. But again, when it comes to badass characters in general, I don't want to keep saying female because it's so much more than that, but she is definitely the character to do that with. If you really wanted to have a iconic mainstay character to stand the test of time throughout cinema, this was your character to do it with.
And they just kind of dropped the ball with after the Alien versus Predator. I think that's part of one of the reasons why I wasn't as interested in Requiem, because I was hoping that we would have seen more of her story, and it didn't look like they were going in that direction. So that was kind of disappointing for someone who knows about the character and such.
Yeah, and then but yeah, back to the whole Disney version of Predator, and this is kind of I don't know if this is a positive note, but I will point out is that at the moment right now, there's a little bit of a legal battle going on between Disney and the original creators of the Predator franchise, in the sense that from what I read, it was that once Fox was done with the franchise, once their license was up, it was supposed to default back to them. But it's well, they sold it, but that still ends their licensing with the Predator. So technically, it's supposed to default back to them. And we all know how the mouse operates, is that it's probably not going to let that go. But at the same time, and again, just because they're the original creators doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to nail it on the head, because a lot of the best Predator stories were not written by them. They essentially wrote that first movie, which, as we kind of described, laid the groundwork, but a lot of what became popular with the Predator franchise came later.
Oh yeah.
I think they did Predator 2, but I could be wrong about that, or I think they had a hand in it.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But if that does happen, if they end up getting the rights back to it, you can pretty much kiss AVP goodbye. Because I doubt any way that Disney would want to work with someone who would essentially beat them out of a property.
Well, we did promise to try and end on a happier note. So, I do have one. Up until now, I didn't find the Alien vs. Predator arcade game available for home until recently. Apparently, Capcom made this arcade stick, and it actually has Alien vs. Predator. And the quality of the arcade stick is actually pretty solid. So if anyone wants to get Alien vs. Predator, the arcade game, that would definitely be one viable way you could do it. Also, with the Capcom arcade collection, there might be a chance it could come out. So we'll have to keep our eye out for that.
Yeah, because I've heard all sorts of stuff where it's like the reason why it wasn't re-released is because of like the licensing issue due to it. But at the same time, I've also heard that like as long as it's just that game, they have the right to release it. So it's kind of like one of those like back and forth. I'm sure it kind of ultimately just comes down to like, does Capcom even want to bother with it?
Yeah.
Which I would. Oh man, I would. I'd be ripped off, but I would pay full price for that.
Like I said, depending on how things go in the future, because right now I'm trying to actually buy a house, and if you might take a look at my Twitter, my dream is to eventually have my own arcade. So if I end up getting a house in the next month, probably one of the first purchases I'm going to be doing is I'm going to buy that arcade stick and a cheap ass TV, so I could have Alien vs. Predator in my damn basement.
Oh man, I would. Where I live, there's no basements, but I would totally have like a side room, some kind of like separate wing of the house that's just arcade machines, and that'd be one of them. Oh man.
Yeah, like I'm just gonna flood my entire basement with my own custom things. I'll figure out how to make it work. And those one-up things. There's that Neo Geo one that looks really promising. So even the minis, if I have to do that, but we'll figure that out. But as I said before, I just wanted to end tonight's stream on a high note because I had a lot of fun, and I appreciate you inviting me here today.
Oh yeah, like I appreciate everyone who came on, everyone who stayed and watched, everyone who dropped in, dropped out just to say hi. I appreciate all of it. This whole podcast thing, it's something I've been skirting with, trying to do. I'm gonna try to get better with it, but like it's so crazy to have like the topic be Predator because, as I said before, this is like my thing. I love Predator. It's basically what I mean. I was into superheroes, but I didn't read a superhero comic for years. I read a Predator comic book way before that, and it's kind of like I know we're not really doing anything in an official capacity, but it is still cool to have like a podcast live in front of people chatting about something that I and everyone here seems to genuinely love and appreciate. So that is
hell yes.
Always something fun. And just to end on an absolute positive note is that if anyone's watching this, anyone ever watches this, you love Predator, you love the concept, you want to get more into it, skip the Predator, go straight to Predators. Don't go in there with any high expectations. Just kind of accept it for what it is, and you'll enjoy it. But if you really, really want to get into Predator stuff, and I'm talking like not just schlocky action stories, but also like, well, there's schlocky action stories, but just good content to read. The Predator comic books, the AVP comic books, they're your way to go. If you ever get a chance, check out the Ombuses Predator. There's like 4 volumes. Those are going to be your best. They're the ones that kind of collect all the comics and not just like specific ones. They're kind of hard to come by in terms of physical, but I'm pretty sure you can find them on like digital media and maybe, certain where the Black Flag reigns supreme. But, do yourself a favor, check out those books. You will not be disappointed. If nothing else, check out Predator, 1718, and Batman vs. Predator. If there's no other Predator comics you check out, let it be those 2.
Agreed. I definitely would agree with that. I was about to say maybe we might be able to find them on like Comixology if you want to get it legitimately, but I'm having difficulty finding the omnibuses. Just trying to find the Predator ones alone, and Yeah, I think we got shot in the foot when the House of Mouse decided, you know what, I'm going to take this over.
I wonder if Dark Horse has, because I mean they still should technically own those comics in and of itself, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Let me
but
see.
I'm not seeing the Star Wars stuff here either, so they probably, yeah.
So on darkhorse.com, they have the Essential Comics Volume 1, which is basically kind of like the greatest hits of the Predator comics, which you're not going to get every single comic with that, but that is when it comes to nothing else, that is a pretty good compromise, I would say. Because I know for a fact that one has at least those first 3 comics in it. It has that first arc with Dutch's brother. So if nothing else, that's a good read. And they got a good majority of the AVP comics as well. So that's a good. Oh no, they got okay. So yeah, Dark Horse definitely has Predator omnibuses.
Oh,
I'm
that's
looking at
awesome.
them right now. Let me do a screen share real quick, just to.
Oh, please. Yeah, I was looking at what do you call it? I was looking at Comixology because they usually have a pretty good selection, legitimately. But yeah, the best I could see here is Superman and Batman versus Alien and Predator. Batman versus Predator, mostly because it was a DC comic. I might want to check that out actually. And Archie versus Predator for some reason. Seriously?
All right, so
man,
here it
that was
is.
so beautiful.
It doesn't look like it's a direct buy. It seems like it'll take you to some other sites, which again, I would suggest at least giving it a read. You know, I wouldn't necessarily say buy it because they are going to be a bit pricey, especially now. But at the very least, give them a read. Start with that first volume. If you like that, feel free to just dive deeper and deeper. There's 4 volumes total of the regular Predator, classic Predator, and then there's 2 volumes of Alien versus Predator.
Damn.
So
that is just that's beautiful, man. That is just. Oh wow, and it's not that expensive either. $24 for an omnibus. That's
this
solid.
this is what their price is supposed to be. Buying it secondhand, you're probably going to find it a lot more expensive. So just keep that in mind.
Well, that's true. Damn it. All right.
So we're 2 hours 30 minutes in. I think it's a good time to call it. I want to thank again everyone who came on. Jay, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, man.
Thank you to Cody, Soggy, Slim, Megatron, and everyone who watched. I appreciate everyone coming on here. Like I said, it's a very pseudo-personal topic for me. I love Predator, and I love sharing that love with everybody else. So,
yep. Thank you, and for everyone here, thank you as well. And I hope you all have a good night, and take care.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.